What are you thankful for? Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you all being here on a rivalry weekend, and I'm thankful for you, all of you. Thank you so much for being here and checking out our work and what we do and what we provide. Best discussion, debate, and analysis, not because of what I do, but because of what you do. So we appreciate you being here. We've got a couple calls lined up already, so we will get to them in just a second. Just want to remind everyone, when you shop, are you shopping for Christmas? Are you shopping for Christmas yet? I typically do that extremely late, but at least it's online now. I haven't had to travel to a mall in quite some time, which is a nice thing. But when you shop online, go to Amazon and use the Amazon link that we provide. It's in the description section of all the videos here at the Voice of College Football. So please grab that Amazon link, put it somewhere where you will remember it when you do your shopping, and use the Amazon link. It doesn't cost you a penny. It helps provide some support to the channel. Doesn't cost you a penny. Same shopping experience. It's all Amazon. So please use the Amazon link. We've got a Clemson, South Carolina preview that we posted a few hours ago. Check it out with Chris Phillips of Spurs Up Show and Jason Priester from Sports Illustrated. So check out the South Carolina Clemson preview. We also previewed Florida State, Florida. They get together in prime time on Friday night, and we will be live after the FSU Florida game. All right, we will have post-game all over the place, as we typically do throughout the weekend here at the Voice of College Football. That means on Friday, we've got post-game after the Texas-Baylor game on the Texas channel. We've got post-game after Florida State, Florida on the FSU and Florida channels. And we've got post-game, post-game Iowa, Nebraska. One of the huge games of the weekend is Iowa guns for a Big Ten Western Division championship. And they've defeated Nebraska like 7 or 8 consecutive years. Again, what are you thankful for? You should be thankful. Hopefully you've got something. Hopefully you've got a long list of things to be thankful for. I certainly do. So we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Rivalry week has kicked off in fine fashion at the Egg Bowl. And I got to say that the Egg Bowl is one of the great rivalries in college football, one of the fiercest, most hotly contested rivalries in college football. And we had another display of that tonight as Mississippi State holds on to defeat Ole Miss on a failed 2-point conversion, 24-22. That was a game that I covered in person for 6 consecutive seasons, the Egg Bowl. So it's a bit near and dear to my heart at the outset of my career there at WCBI. All right, let's welcome in everyone and get to the first caller. Welcome into the Voice of College Football, Texas Savage. What's going on tonight? Hello, Texas Savage. Hello, Texas Savage. Texas Savage, I may have to oust the Texas helmet from the top shelf. Texas Savage going once, twice, 3 times. Texas Savage, give us a call back. All right. One caller who never fails us, of course, is Reasonable Gump. Reasonable Gump, appreciate you being here. What's going on tonight?
Always great to be here, Mark. Man, what a way to kick off rivalry week. That was an awesome game.
It was a really good game.
You got to tell us about your history covering this game. I know you worked the Mississippi area mostly, right? Did you get to do this game every single year?
Did this game every single year, yes. Because I was the sports director at a CBS station in Columbus, Mississippi, which is only 25 minutes from Starkville. So I got indoctrinated into the SEC at the age of 25 years old, coming from Ohio. So I came down, got a job as a sports reporter, weekend sports anchor. And then after about 6 months, I got promoted, which was nice, to sports director. So got to run the department. So I had my dream job and covering the SEC. And because of our coverage area there at WCBI, we went into like 7 or 8 counties in Alabama. So we had to cover Alabama, which Tuscaloosa was only an hour away. And Ole Miss was actually the furthest away by far, like 2.5 hours, but we had to cover Ole Miss because we covered that area.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was fun. Just right out of the gate, I got the job in late August, early September, like right when football season started. The very first football game I went to was a Gene Stallings Alabama team defeating Vandy like 14-6 or 17-6 or something like that in 1994. Bryant-Denny Stadium. That was the first game I attended and covered down there. But yeah, the Egg Bowl. I went to that every year, and it was exciting. There was so Joe Lee Dunn was the coach at Ole Miss, and they were in all sorts of deep water, deep something. There almost got the death penalty, NCAA probation. It wasn't Joe Lee Dunn's fault. He was the interim coach. And Jackie Sherrill was at Mississippi State when I got there. And they went to the Peach Bowl. We went to a Peach Bowl their first year, the first year that I was there.
Yeah.
And yeah, Tommy Tuberville then took over at Ole Miss, which I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Tommy Tuberville, because when he first took the job, we were doing SEC Media Days in Birmingham, and it was my first SEC Media Days. And Tommy Tuberville was nice enough to leave the SEC coaches party, banquet, whatever they called it, that was blocks and blocks away, to come down and join us live on the news. And he was always good to me. He let me in his office for National Signing Day. We did National Signing Days live from Tommy Tuberville's office and Jackie Sherrill's office, and Tuberville would let us on the field during practice, and it was great stuff. So we were there for 6 years. Yeah, the Egg Bowl. There were some really good games. There was a last second Stuart Patridge, too. I can't remember the wide receiver's name. Peterson, 85. Ole Miss pulled one out, and Tuberville and Sherrill didn't like each other. They met at midfield, and I was standing fairly close, and Jackie Sherrill held out his hand, and Tuberville just like kind of slapped him like that, and like gave him one of these. Yeah, it was a great experience. Yep. In the first Thanksgiving, and I will cease to bore everybody else, but I'll tell one story. You got me started on all this. Now the wheels are churning, things I hadn't thought about for a long time. The first Thanksgiving Egg Bowl was in 1998, and there were rumors swirling about Tommy Tuberville, who that night then took the Auburn job. And as soon as his team lost to Mississippi State, he took off for Auburn. But yeah, we covered that game, and that was the Thanksgiving game. And we would do like an hour special before the game and a big post-game extravaganza. Yeah, it was great. Good stuff.
Funny how things are pretty cyclical, because Lane Kiffin just lost this one, and a lot of signs are pointing to him doing the exact same thing.
They are. The signs are out there, even though he denies it, much like Tommy Tuberville did 24 years ago.
Let me ask you something, Mark. What do you think about that? Because I'm over here, I'll freely admit I'm sort of a biased party looking at this, obviously, but I just can't see this much more than it would be a lateral move. I mean, yeah, Auburn's had more football success over historically than Ole Miss, not that much more. They've won a couple national titles, but I mean, just think about this. Ole Miss fans don't have the expectations Auburn fans do. They're perfectly happy with 9 or 10 wins. They love Lane Kiffin. He's done great for their program. And they don't have to play Georgia every year. They don't have the kind of expectations that Auburn fans are going to want. They don't have the same booster problem Auburn seems to have. I don't know. I kind of think this would be a bad move.
Somebody else asked me that same question just a couple of days ago, and I had a similar response to you. 24 years ago, the move from Ole Miss to Auburn was clear cut. There was a comparison between the two programs. Here we are 24 years later. Forget, again, tradition, forget Bo Jackson, forget Vince Dooley, forget all of that. Let's talk about football in 2022. The only thing that I can't answer is I don't know how much of a budget or resources you have available to you at Auburn as the head football coach versus Ole Miss.
Yeah, I can't answer that either. I mean, I know Oxford's a bigger, better, richer city than the town of Auburn is, but as far as the universities are concerned, I mean, it can't be that much more, can it? Alabama schools are not exactly known for being that much more well off than Mississippi schools. So
the Auburn coach has always made more money than the Ole Miss coach.
I think a lot of that has to do with what I was kind of alluding to before, though. But boosters and fan expectations, they think they should be what Alabama is.
And I haven't been down there in a long time, but I think I still have a pretty decent read on it. That if you coach at Ole Miss, your game is this game that was played tonight.
Right.
And that's who you're compared against first and foremost is Mississippi State. Now, they also like to fashion themselves as being a rival with LSU, but LSU doesn't care about them. From what I understand, they don't care about them. Don't care about Arkansas, and they fancy themselves as LSU's rivals as well. But yeah, you're judged against Mississippi State, and you can certainly keep up with them, if not surpass them, majority of the time. Versus, being stuck in the same state with Alabama as Auburn's head coach, and being stuck with the Georgia, and I don't expect that to stop in regards to when Oklahoma and Texas jump in and the schedule's reformatted. Auburn's going to need to play Georgia every year. The SEC is not going to change those kind of long-standing rivalries. But I tend to agree with you, except for not knowing what they're going to pay a head coach at Ole Miss versus Auburn. And it's always been higher at Auburn, and not knowing the resources available to that coach to hire analysts, to have ridiculous recruiting budgets where you can fly anywhere at the drop of a hat. That aside, I don't see the difference in the two jobs as it stands right this second.
As it stands today, right? Yeah. I mean, we'll see. You mentioned the Texas and Oklahoma thing. I think the most likely thing to happen with that is Auburn and Alabama both get moved over to the East, because that way you get to preserve the Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, Georgia. You bring back Auburn and Florida. You start making Alabama play Georgia every year, and then you keep one cross division, so Alabama would keep LSU. And then, so if the Ole Miss, they would end up losing an annual Alabama game, so their job might even be easier.
I'm almost positive that Greg Sankey made the statement that they're getting rid of divisions. No divisions. None.
I mean, sure, they say that, but as soon as it happens, then I'll believe it.
The Pac-12 did, and the ACC is going to.
Right, but I'm not sure I've ever seen the SEC follow suit with what the Pac-12 is doing.
That doesn't mean you don't have a schedule format where you're still.
I'm not saying it's a bad idea, Mark. It's just, don't get me wrong. I'm an advocate for no divisions. Remember, I argued the same thing. I hate this thing where we only play one school from the East every 6 years, and an entire recruiting class can never get to see them. So I'm an advocate for it. It doesn't seem like that's ever been something that other people wanted to do.
Well, my second point was that even if divisions go away, that doesn't mean that your schedule, each and every team's schedule, is not going to be weighted a certain way. Meaning, like in the ACC, they're doing away with divisions, but each team has 3 teams that they play every year. They're designated rivals. So Auburn's not going to get away from Alabama and Georgia regardless. They're still going to have to play those games every year, you would think.
Right. So that kind of my point kind of almost remains. Yes. Auburn's still going to be the toughest job. Yeah. Ole Miss may actually lose an annual game with Alabama, though.
Yeah, they might.
So, in fact, if we're talking about 3 teams to keep, they probably would, because Alabama would keep Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU, right?
Yes.
It would have to be those 3.
Well,
anyway, Mark, back to this game real quick. I know you got other callers, man. I thought this was a very hard-fought game. I actually thought Ole Miss was kind of controlling it in the first half, but sort of that first drive where they just went right down and then just sort of stalled in the red zone, that was sort of the pace of the game. They just couldn't finish drives. And that last drive they had, which was set up by just a boneheaded head-scratching move by Mississippi State down there to try and run it in and fumble the ball like that. They should have just took some knees and kicked a field goal, in my opinion. But, so that last drive they did was good, but didn't end up working out. But yeah, I thought it was a very hard fought game, and it was entertaining. That's what we want, right? If we don't have a dog in the fight, give us a good game.
This game usually doesn't disappoint. I think the most recent fiasco, which was entertaining for people that don't care who wins, is the one a couple of years ago where, was it Elijah Moore? I don't want to misidentify the player. Elijah Moore was a great player who went on to the NFL. May not have been him. I'll have to look it up. Anyway, the Ole Miss wide receiver that caught what should have been the game tying touchdown pass, and then he faked the urination on the end zone. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was 2019.
And it backed up the place kicker 15 yards, and he missed the PAT, so they lost the game. Now, I got to admit, I would love to be able to comment on the Mike Leach decision that you're talking about, but I got home from Thanksgiving at 8 o'clock. I had this game recorded. I had a Miami show from 8 to 9. I've been playing catch up on this game, and I was at like 12 minutes left in the game when I sat down here. So I didn't get to that point.
Okay. Well, basically, Mississippi State had the ball on the 3-yard line they're up 8 points. All they got to do is either make Ole Miss burn the timeouts or run the clock, kick a field goal to force 2 scores. And Ole Miss had like 30 yards of offense in the second half at that point. So, I mean, that would have put the game away. But instead, they tried to run it in, and Ole Miss forces a fumble and then drives 98 yards to get a touchdown. But then they couldn't make the 2-point conversion. So that's what.
They had 4th and goal from the 3.
2nd and goal.
Well, they had 2nd and goal, but it's they fumbled. They fumbled.
Yes, they fumbled.
Okay.
So, and then Ole Miss drove it 98 yards, got it, but they missed a 2-point conversion. So.
I don't have as much problem with it since they coughed up the ball. I thought they went for it. Okay, they fumbled.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they would. I'm sure they would have kicked on 4th down.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of, you don't usually see a team fumble a ball kind of in that kind of. I don't know. Actually, I don't really know what I'm saying. I thought they should have been more conservative and just kicked the field goal itself. But
I'm looking at it right now. It's 1st and goal right now. They're up 8. Yeah, there's 6 minutes left in the game. All right.
Anyway, man.
Anything else?
Nope, that's all.
Reasonable Gump. We appreciate it.
Good Thanksgiving. Good rivalry week.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
Bye.
Our man Reasonable Gump gets us started here at the Voice of College Football. We would again encourage everyone to join our Discord. Go to patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV, and you can talk to all these folks. Many of the ones that are calling tonight, you can talk to them all the time, 24/7, 365, and about 100 others about any team you'd like. We got Jeffrey on the line. Jeffrey, what's going on tonight?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. Happy Thanksgiving to you and everybody watching, everybody out there. But, man, that game, dude, I didn't see the whole thing because of the fact that I had somebody that in my family that was wanting to watch the Patriots Vikings game that was over. But I saw like the second half when they left. And, I mean, Ole Miss, I just don't understand the end of the game. Like Mississippi State, you have the game, they fumble it obviously, and Ole Miss has a chance. They go down the field and they score a touchdown, and you have the 2-point conversion play. I don't have a problem with the 2-point conversion play that Lane Kiffin ran, because obviously if that wasn't batted away, that would have been a 2-point conversion. Yeah, the play was good. And that's not the problem. My thing is why do you call 2 timeouts? You gave yourself no chance to win if you don't get it, and then you have to kick an onside. And you had no time. I don't understand why they called that second timeout. You should have never called the first one, but the second one was ridiculous.
How much time was left?
$1:25 in the game. They had 3 timeouts, and on the 2-point conversion play, he called a timeout. And I was like, okay, that's not smart, but he called a timeout, I guess, to get a better play, whatever. But then he called another timeout before the play.
Yeah, so there are things going on that we're not necessarily privy to, but at the same time, you're in that situation, and for the entirety of the fourth quarter, you're down by 8 points. You got to think that that somebody as smart as Lane Kiffin, who's got the offensive mind that he does, knows what 2-point play they are going to run. They have to, like any other team in America that's worth anything, know this is our number one 2-point play. And when we're playing a big game and we need it, this is our 2-point play. And I would think that they would be more prepared for that situation, because like you say, if they're at a minute 25 and even if they miss, and then you start doing the math on 3 timeouts, a minute 25, do we kick deep and try to stop them? We call a timeout at 1:20, then we call one at 1:15, then we call one at 1:10, then they run the clock and punt at like 40 some seconds, and we've got 40 some seconds to try to drive the field and kick a field goal, or did we go for the onside kick? But yeah, you kill 45 seconds of that strategy by calling another timeout.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, they had 3 timeouts when they scored the touchdown. And again, you called your first timeout to, I guess, whatever, come up with a play. I mean, the time was running down, so they called the first timeout. I was like, it's fine. But then you call another one, and that ended your hopes of having any chance if you didn't get it. Because, like, if they had had the 2 timeouts, when he called the first one, you had 2 timeouts, there probably would have been 25-30 seconds left. But when they called the second timeout, again, when you don't get it, then it's mathematically over. And that was just the frustrating thing for me, because they gave themselves no chance when they didn't get it. But that's all I got to say about that. It was a great game, and I picked Ole Miss to win. And then when the Lane Kiffin stuff and all that with him going to Auburn, I kind of almost flipped it to Mississippi State, but I was like, whatever, I'll keep it with Ole Miss. But they had a really good chance to win. I don't know. Some people will say, Lane Kiffin wasn't engaged, and that's why they lost. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we don't even know what's going on with all that. I mean, I thought he seemed kind of engaged. I mean, obviously the end of the game management with the clock was awful, but I don't know. I mean, my thing is about Lane Kiffin to Auburn is that my mind just keeps going back to him getting fired on the tarmac at USC. And I'm like, dude, do you want this to happen to you again? I mean, you're not going to get fired on the tarmac at Auburn. I mean, they'll let you go home. But to me, I'm afraid for the guy. I'm like, dude, don't go to Auburn. I mean, you're going to get more money, but this could happen to you again.
You're afraid for Lane Kiffin. Jeffrey, please, the man's fine. He'll be okay. He's got plenty of options in life.
I shouldn't have worded it that way. I'm not saying it like that, but I'm just thinking about it. You know what I'm saying?
You're trying to warn him. You're trying to warn him that the grass is not always greener, that he's beloved in Oxford, and Ole Miss has less expectations, and they'll probably keep him around for going 8-4 like he did this year with 3 consecutive losses. So the look on the season went from possibly challenging Alabama and LSU to 3 consecutive losses, where they just haven't looked good the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that really hurt. But yeah, that's exactly what I was meaning. I mean, I know he's good for sure. That's hilarious. But I mean, just my thing is about coaches is that I have a lot of people when I talk about this kind of stuff, and they'll say, well, this guy should have never left. I mean, Scott Frost, I've heard a million times, Scott Frost shouldn't have left UCF for Nebraska. And I'm like, okay, he just went 12-0, or 13-0 or whatever. And he was going back to his alma mater. I mean, if it had worked out, you'd be like, oh, this made complete sense. Same people that are saying it shouldn't have gone. That's different for sure. I mean, that makes complete sense. But for me, with a guy like Lane Kiffin, who went from Tennessee to USC, and then that happened to him, I just think that you got to think about it, because Auburn, obviously, I don't think Brian Harsin was supported the best, but if you're not winning at least 9 or 10 games at Auburn, they hate you. They just don't like you. The fans don't like you. The administration doesn't like you. It's just not a good place to be as a head coach unless you're winning what they want you to win, the amount they want you to win. And obviously it can be done. Auburn has the resources, but they didn't even give Brian Harsin a year and a half, and he was already gone. And you just, I don't know. I just, me personally, I'm not in this position, obviously, and I'm not probably ever going to be in that position. I'll probably never be a head coach of any kind or anything like that. But I would not want to be going to Auburn. I just would not be wanting to go to Auburn.
Sure. Well, to understand that Lane Kiffin is going to be welcomed in a much different way than Brian Harsin. Brian Harsin already had 2 strikes against him when he started. There were a lot of people around that program that didn't think that he was the correct hire. Wrong part of the country. He had no attachment, no relationships in the SEC, where Lane Kiffin is a national brand. He's a national name, especially within that conference now. And I think that the reception for Lane Kiffin is going to be much different than it was for Brian Harsin.
That makes sense. I agree with you there. I always thought the Brian Harsin hire was weird anyway. I'm like, Boise State. That's just completely insane. But yeah, it's really interesting. But again, basically my last point, I guess I'll get out of here. I don't really have anything else to say, I guess. But besides all the games are going to be crazy this weekend. But my thing is the point that I was basically making with Scott Frost is we don't know how a coach is going to work out, because you look at Josh Heupel, and I know that this maybe isn't the greatest time to bring it up because Tennessee just got destroyed against South Carolina. But, he did worse than Scott Frost at UCF. But he goes to Tennessee and completely turns them around. And everybody's like, well, great hire. They made a great decision. I'm like, well, you don't know that until you do hire the guy. I mean, I didn't think Josh Heupel was going to work at Tennessee when they first hired him. I'm like, he was decent at UCF. But again, you don't know. Circumstances are always different, and the school does have to give you a chance. And like you said with Brian Harsin, they never did, and everything just was against them. But I mean, we don't know on these coaches how it's going to work out. And I think a lot of people that act and claim like, oh, this was a bad hire from the beginning, you don't know that. And no one knows at the beginning how it's going to work out. And a lot of times, hires I think are poor end up turning out really good, and hires that I think are slam dunks end up being terrible. So it's interesting.
Well, I would say that there are a handful of coaches that if you hire them, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed to work out, but they have a long history of success, whether that's Lincoln Riley, Brian Kelly, where you can understand those hires, and it's difficult to really criticize those hires because they've hired Hall of Fame level coaches. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to work out at that stop, but they've hired Hall of Fame coaches. Then you've got the complete unknowns that have been hired from somewhere, like not too many people knew anything about Tom Allen when he was hired at Indiana. We could go through a number of people. Brent Pry, who's the current Virginia Tech coach that was the Penn State defensive coordinator, guys that you're taking a chance on that were just lower level head coaches or coordinators at a large school, and you're giving them their first chance as a big time head coach. And then you got something in between where Lane Kiffin, well, he's proven that he's capable. He's proven that he's so. I know that you're arguing this from more the Lane Kiffin side, that's not the job to take versus Auburn hitting a home run with Lane Kiffin. But yeah, like you, I was neutral on Josh Heupel. I didn't criticize it. I didn't say, wow, this is a bad hire because of X, Y, and Z, nor did I praise it as a great hire. I just said, he's capable. He's shown that he can run an offense at Oklahoma. He's got an offensive mind, and then he goes to UCF, and they did reasonably well, but maybe that was set up by Scott Frost. So yeah, I threw my hands up and basically said, I'm just going to wait and see on this. There have been other hires when I've gone out and taken a stand to say bad hire, great hire, and many times I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, 100%. It's just tough to tell. I mean, you see, like, no one cares here, but again, Indiana basketball, for example, Archie Miller got hired in 2017, and everybody was like, slam dunk hire. He was great at Dayton. He's going to take him to Final Fours and all that. He didn't do anything. Mike Woodson gets hired, and it's like, oh, he's, terrible hire. He hasn't been in college in 40 years, and then Indiana's a lot better right now. I'm not saying they're going to continue to be good, but you don't know on hires for sure. And a lot of times you have a great idea what that a a coach is going to work out at a job and it doesn't. But it's just going to be very interesting to see if Lane Kiffin goes to Auburn. I hope it works out. I mean, I like the win Alabama. Auburn is a good rivalry game. Obviously, I lean Alabama. I prefer them to win. But I want Auburn to be good. And I was personally upset when they fired Gus Malzahn because I really liked him at Auburn. I know he wasn't what everybody wanted, but I liked him at Auburn. Hopefully, if Lane Kiffin goes there, it works out, and it's going to be very interesting to see. And I'm looking very forward to the games this weekend. It's kind of sad it's the last week of the regular season, but it's going to be very interesting to see, and I'm looking forward to how the playoff scenario shakes out because, as people said, there's still a chance for Alabama, and that's a lot of people just want them gone. They got an 11% chance.
11? That's a pretty high percentage. It's not high, but I mean, considering where they are, considering that they've got 2 losses and they're not playing in a conference championship game, that's pretty high.
My dad wants them to make it so bad. He was like, he saw the thing. He was like, man, they still got a chance. Because I was like, well, if TCU loses and USC loses and LSU loses, you never know, man. There's still a chance. It's unbelievable. People would lose their minds if they made it in. My dad be happy, but man.
I don't know how I'll respond to that because I don't see a scenario in which I think it's justified for them to reach the playoffs.
It's not. I agree. They shouldn't make the playoff. I agree. It's just the fact there's a chance. It's just sick. I mean, it's like people are like, oh, they're out. They lost 2 games. It's like, oh, well, there's still a chance. But if TCU wins out, it's over for sure. I mean, it just and USC wins out, they're not getting it. I hope USC. I told Tony, Rick, and all that. I'm like, please, USC, just do your thing. Make the playoffs so the Pac-12 will, in the national media, at least will be relevant. Just win out. I want TCU in there. I prefer, even my dad kind of swung him like, I hope they both teams make the playoff. I want them in.
I'm with you too. I want to see the Pac-12 represented. It's been way too long, and I want to see the Pac-12 there. The Pac-12 has had a tremendous bounce back season. I don't know that it's everything that we hear on our Pac-12 show, but it's had a tremendous bounce back season. And then TCU, fresh blood, just a new team. And even if they're not one of the 4 best, they've earned it thus far. I would like to see them complete the deal and complete the Cinderella run and be there. ESPN, though, their index, however it measures all this stuff, also has tremendously high percentages on both Ohio State and Michigan, which leads us to believe, obviously, that they're looking at a loser of that game reaching the playoffs. Like, they've got Ohio State at like 90% or something like that, and they've got Michigan at like 64%. Well, that tells me that they think that the loser is making the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. In that scenario, like if you had Michigan lose, just say 1-score game to Ohio State, then for them to get in, it would take Georgia and then Ohio State, and then if TCU won out, then you'd have to have USC out of the picture, and you'd have to have LSU out of the picture, and then Michigan. I think Michigan with 1 loss would get in easily over 2-loss Alabama. So, and if they lost by 1 score, so yeah, I can see that for sure. And if Ohio State loses, they'll easily probably put them in.
I would hate to see conference champions with 1 loss out.
That's why I said if USC lost, then Michigan would get in. Sure. If USC wins out, then they would get in over Michigan or Ohio State with 1 loss. Yeah, well, yeah, Clemson, if they went out, they're still hanging around. Maybe they can jump Alabama too. It's still possible. North Carolina, though, losing to Georgia Tech hurt a little bit because it took some shine off of that. Yeah,
it shouldn't hurt, and you know why? Basically, Clemson's last opponent here in the ACC championship game, and really North Carolina's last 2 opponents. Look at it this way. From a perception standpoint, North Carolina being 11-1 in the ACC championship game was what Clemson wanted and looks the best. But North Carolina just lost to a Georgia Tech team that Clemson beat. So they're both on Clemson's schedule. So it's, if you weight the game correctly and properly, it either lifts North Carolina and drops Georgia Tech, or it lifts Georgia Tech and drops North Carolina. Like, there's no difference to the strength of schedule or the opponent's record.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. To be honest with Clemson, because I wasn't even thinking about them, they're still there, like with an outside chance. For if Clemson is going to make the playoff, they would actually have to have Notre Dame lose to USC. I mean, Notre Dame beat USC, USC lose to Notre Dame, because then the Notre Dame loss wouldn't look as bad and USC would be gone. That's how Clemson would have to have any chance. And they'd have to be dominant against South Carolina, dominant against North Carolina, and then they would jump Alabama. Then if TCU lost, yeah, Clemson could still make it. It's slim, but it's still there. You're right.
And then even if you look at this North Carolina State in terms of Clemson's resume, again, it looks better if they play a 10-2 North Carolina team in the championship game, but they also played NC State. So they either have a 10-2 North Carolina and a 7-5 NC State on their schedule, on their resume, or they've got a 9-3 North Carolina and an 8-4 NC State team on their resume. It shouldn't matter. It does. The committee gets fooled by the stupidest things. It does matter to them based on perception, but it shouldn't matter who wins these two games. The North Carolina Georgia Tech game last week or the North Carolina NC State game. It's all about the appearance.
Yeah, I agree. That makes complete sense. The only other thing that irritates me too about what the playoff committee does, and obviously there's nothing you can do about it, but I've always hated how when you lose matters. I can't stand that. Like if you lose like LSU, lose earlier in the season and then you went out, like their chance of making the playoff is easier than Alabama's if they were in the same scenario because of when they lost. I mean, Auburn, people completely forget that Auburn would have made the playoff with 2 losses that year because they lost early and then they lost to Georgia again. They had the 3rd loss, but they were in. Like they were ranked 3rd when they played Georgia. Sure. And so to me, when you lose shouldn't matter as much. I hate the fact that it does. I know why it does, because you're able to move back up, but it's just frustrating because of the fact a lot of teams have been screwed over by that. Like if TCU lost in week 1 and then won out, they'd have an easier chance than if they lose right now.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And
it's frustrating.
If that was going to make sense, then the committee should be forthright with everyone and say, we are selecting the best teams right today. We are not selecting the best resumes. We're selecting the best teams today. Therefore, the season is weighted. They don't want to say that. They don't want to say that. That's the last thing in the world they want to say. But the season is weighted. Should it be weighted? I think there's an argument for that. I don't like to see it weighted. I don't want to. If you really want to weight the season, then like the first game of the season is only worth like 1/12 of what 1/12, 2/12, down the line, and then the last game of the season is worth if it all evens out to 1 game, and then by the time we get to the last game of the season, that's worth 2 games. Mm-hmm. They weight it.
Yeah, it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it, but it's so true though. I mean, it is.
Absolutely. It's a circus for sure.
I guess that's about all I got. I know everybody else is waiting. That was a great conversation. I'm hopefully calling soon. I can't wait for the rest of the games this weekend. Hopefully everybody, I don't like sound like DeReal saying it, but hopefully everybody's team wins, which is impossible. I mean, it's never going to happen. No matter how much you want every team to win, it's not going to happen. But hopefully it's a great weekend of football, and I'm looking forward to it for sure. And, I just hope, personally, I hope TCU USC makes it just for the new teams in there, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting.
That's DeReal's closing line. My closing line would be, I know that half of everyone's teams are going to win.
And it's more likely not going to be Indiana, right?
Most likely not.
Even though they did win last week, they got the spittoon back. Yeah, maybe they'll get the bucket. Who knows?
Old open bucket. There it is.
Dexter Williams.
Tune into that one. Big Ten Network.
Every cable provider, most of them have Big Ten, but Big Ten Network, they don't have the Pac-12 Network.
Yeah,
So I couldn't watch the 40th anniversary of the play, man.
USC and UCLA are leaving the minor leagues in a couple years.
That's funny.
All right, Jeffrey. We appreciate you stopping by, man. Enjoy the football tomorrow. We've got some good games tomorrow.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Todd Gwynn, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Thanks for your content. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that. We're going to give Texas Savage another go here. Texas Savage.
What's up?
Oh, hey. How you doing?
Good.
What's going on?
I want to talk about the coaching carousel.
Yeah. Who's on the carousel and who's jumping off and who's jumping on?
You think Texas will be open this year or next?
I do not believe that Texas will be open this year. I do believe that Sark, with a 5-7 and a 8-4, 7-5, and then whatever happens to the bowl game, is going to be setting himself up for a need to deliver season. Need to make the Big 12 championship game at least season.
If he doesn't, who do you think they'll hire?
Oh, you know how much is going to change in college football between right now and 1 year from now? All you have to do is look back 1 year or go back a year before that.
Yeah.
It's crazy what happens in one season of college football.
Do you think Oklahoma's coach is on the hot seat?
No. If Brent Venables has the same type season in 2023 as he has this season, then I will be telling you that he's setting himself up to have a hot seat season in 24.
Yeah.
It's his first season.
Who do you think's going to win the Texas-Baylor game tomorrow?
Oh, I haven't made a prediction on that. I've got to make my prediction soon. They're on Patreon. Have not made a prediction on that game. Texas is like an 8.5 point favorite.
Yeah.
They're at home too, right?
Yes.
I am more sure that Baylor is going to be invested in that game than Texas. So if Texas is playing its A game and Baylor plays its A game, Texas wins the game. Texas is a better, more talented team than Baylor, but they are certainly capable of losing to Baylor. They lost to Texas Tech. They lost to other teams. They look like garbage against TCU on offense that entire game.
Do you think Texas will keep Gary Patterson?
If they're smart, they will. Yeah, he can be a tremendous support, and I'm sure he already has been. I would keep him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He might be the next head coach, too.
Well, yeah. So I don't know if they're looking. I don't know if Gary Patterson's aspirations are to just kind of fade off into the sunset, make a lot of money, and just have a low pressure kind of position and go from there, or if he's looking for the next jump to another big time job.
He could take the Texas job in 2023.
He could, if I were Texas, and I have always ranked Gary Patterson extremely high in any coach's rankings that I've done in the past when he was in play. However, his last 5 seasons at Texas Christian would concern me if I was Texas. I think he's lost his fastball, and I don't know that he's up for that job anymore.
Yeah. How about Urban Meyer?
Well, there are rumors out there that Urban Meyer is going to Nebraska. And there are also, we hear from our Auburn folks, our connections with Auburn is that they're going to hire somebody in the next 24 to 48 hours. Well, it would be in 48 hours, probably after the Iron Bowl.
Yeah.
But yeah, Urban Meyer. I have always questioned Urban Meyer's interest in Nebraska because Urban Meyer understands the significance of recruiting. He is a recruiting guy first and foremost. Like he is, he knows you need elite athletes And I don't know that he believes that anybody can lure enough elite athletes to Lincoln, Nebraska.
How about Lincoln Riley's brother?
Yeah, that's running the offense there at TCU. I don't have much of an opinion on him. I don't know that much about him other than his current role.
How about Dan Lanning at Oregon?
Going to Nebraska?
No, the Texas if in the
Oh,
future.
going to Texas. Oh. Yeah, that's intriguing. I think Dan Lanning's off to a good start. I'm impressed with Dan Lanning. I'm impressed with what I hear out of him. I typically don't get sold on opening news conferences for coaches, but I got to say that Dan Lanning won me over. I thought it was extremely impressive that he was able to coach the Georgia defense to a national championship while he was running back and forth. And I know that all coaches do this, but he had like a killer couple recruiting weeks while he was splitting his time and got off to a great start. And I've been impressed with his team this year. His defense, though, with him being a defensive guy, I'm a bit underwhelmed there, but that sometimes takes time.
I think Texas needs a higher SEC type coach.
So when you say an SEC type coach, you mean a coach who has coached in the SEC and been successful?
Yes.
So, yeah, Urban Meyer, Dan Lanning, SEC coordinator. Maybe they could hire Jimbo Fisher.
No. Who else is a good one?
So you've given up on Sark.
Pretty much.
Okay. All right. I don't know why he was hired in the first place.
Me either.
We were going through this with our previous caller, and I said, there were certain coaching hires that I said, I've got no real beat on this one. There are other ones that I've said, bad hire, great hire. Sark, I said, bad hire. You can look up that video, bad hire. I don't know what he accomplished at Washington or USC that showed that he earned a shot at Texas. I don't get it.
You know who the second option was, right?
The second option, as soon as you mention it to me, I'm sure I will remember, but I don't off the top of my head.
Hugh Freeze.
Hugh Freeze at Texas. Was it?
Yeah. That's what they said.
Yeah, if I'm Texas, I don't know that I would hire Hugh Freeze, and I'm not even going into his own personal life and his transgressions. I'm just sticking with the football, and he cheated into his best wins, his best teams at Ole Miss, and he's doing a nice job at Liberty. There's no question. He's put them on the map. But I would think Texas could do better. I would think Texas could hire somebody who's proven.
Who's proven?
Who is proven.
Yeah.
All right, Texas Savage.
I said who's proven.
Oh, you're asking me who's proven?
Yeah.
Urban Meyer's proven. Brian Kelly's proven. Nick Saban's proven. Dabo Swinney's proven. At this point, well, Kirby Smart's obviously proven. Who's proven? Lowering those expectations based on the school where they are currently coaching. PJ Flex, proven. Kalen DeBoer, to a certain extent, is proven just because at the group of five level, he was one of the very best as well. And now he's turned around a Washington team. And I'm not going to go overboard on what Washington's doing because it's only one season. And if that was somebody else who had not proven it somewhere else, I wouldn't be as high. But on Kalen DeBoer, yes.
Where'd he come from anyways?
Fresno State.
Uh-oh.
Proven. Of course, Mike Gundy's proven.
I don't want him either.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Mike Gundy fan. He's a good coach, but I don't know that he's that good. Lane
Well,
Kiffin.
I'll talk to you later.
All right, Texas Savage. Appreciate you being here.
Welcome.
Let's keep it going here at the Voice of College Football. We got our guy Mike Fort on the line. Mike.
Hey Mark, how can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, good, because I had mic problems last night when I was on Corey's Iowa channel. How was your Thanksgiving?
My Thanksgiving was nice. How about you?
Can't complain. Got my fill.
What were you doing over on Corey's channel, badgering him about Michigan winning last year's Big Ten championship game?
No, I don't troll over there.
Okay, good.
No, that's for Ohio State channels.
Okay.
Like I gotta say this. Is Kiffin really worth all this?
Well, I see it as almost similar to when we start to try to figure out what teams out there have defeated quality opponents, and there's not that many that have beaten more than one or two good teams. And it's almost like this. Who can you really trust? Who has really delivered and that you could guarantee is a great football coach that is going to win for sure? There's about 4 guys.
Kiffin isn't on that list for me.
No, he's not on that list. That's what I'm saying. The list is short.
I mean, it's just that he's getting linked to Auburn and all these jobs. I'm like,
Sure.
I don't understand it because, well, first of all, my take, and feel free to correct me. I think he's been trading off his dad's name for too long. I know Monty hasn't been with him for a while, but he got his bones.
Sure. Yeah, there's no way that anyone is a head coach in the NFL at the age of 32 or whatever that had not accomplished anything anywhere else. Yeah.
Well, Cliff Kingsbury did not accomplish anything else, and he got
he at least stayed at a major program for a while. But you're right, he didn't.
And I don't really think Sean McVay had a really impressive resume before he got with the Rams, did he?
That's a good question.
So I mean, they're taking a chance on young people. It's just that Monty's always been his defensive guru. Kind of the yin yang, for Kiffin, for offense. But I mean, this is the same guy. He burned bridges in Oakland. He burned bridges in Knoxville. They left him on the stinking tarmac in Los Angeles.
Sure.
I mean, if you want to say he had a good year.
How long ago was that?
It's been a while, but
10 years. It's been 10 years. How good was Bill Belichick in his first head coaching job in the NFL?
With the Browns?
Yeah.
Okay, it's the Browns. Come on. And actually, I can make the argument he just kind of got lucky because his first season with the Patriots, they were 5-11.
Yeah.
And then they got that guy, Tom something, I think. Oh, yeah, he went here. And then they started 0-2. And then, I don't like to, say this, but thank God Drew Bledsoe got hurt. I don't like really saying that. But if he didn't get hurt, that's the best thing he ever did for the league because he got in at 0-2 Patriots. And then all of a sudden they just took off. So his record for New England is 5-13. Then Brady just fell from the sky, and in my opinion, he just rode Tom's tails all the way.
Well, everything that you just stated has a lot of truth to it, but at the same time, the Tom Brady that we have seen over the last decade plus is not the Tom Brady that was quarterbacking that first season.
Well, yeah, he was more a game manager.
Yes.
He didn't, and he had a great defense. Spectacular defense.
Yes, and Corey Dillon running for 1,600 yards. Now, he did a great job for a first-time quarterback, no question, but he threw for like 140 yards in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, he's there's been some defenses that he's kind of especially like the 2004 year. He had a tremendous defense that year. But going back to, I mean, it seems like under Ole Miss.
So you don't understand why Lane Kiffin is given so much attention. How many coaches, head coaches, would you employ over Lane Kiffin?
Oh dear God. You want to just break them down by conference?
Like there's that many?
Yeah, there's that many.
There shouldn't be that many.
Okay, we'll go with the Big Ten. I'll go Harbaugh, Day, Bielema, possibly Fleck. ACC, I'll go Dabo. That kind of ends that one. The SEC, obvious ones. I mean, if you want me to start naming them.
Yeah, Saban, Kelly, Smart.
Yeah, take your pick.
Maybe Leach. I don't know how you feel about him. Maybe Heupel. Okay.
Probably not Leach. I mean, he's almost like Kiffin. He gets known more for
anyway. We could go through this exercise through every conference, but how many of those coaches are going to Auburn? None, because they all have good jobs where they are. Maybe TJ Fleck would, maybe Brett Bielema would, but most of them would not.
I would take just at the at-larges. I'd take Hugh Freeze over him. I'd take Matt Rule in a heartbeat over him. You know, there are better coaches to be had out there. Like I said, I think Kiffin is more of a sideshow.
Okay. I have some issues with Lane Kiffin in the past, but now he's on his second consecutive job where he's done really good work over a period of time. I don't necessarily buy Hugh Freeze being any better than Lane Kiffin, if being as good as Lane Kiffin.
Well, didn't Hugh Freeze win back-to-back against Alabama in back-to-back years in Ole Miss?
Yeah.
How many people claim that?
But there's a big but after that statement. And what is it?
Yeah, he's a character hire.
He torched the program. He cheated. He got caught. And I'm not even talking about his issues. Those came because of him cheating in football, that came to light and got the program put on probation. So, yeah, he cheated and got classes at Ole Miss, recruiting classes that they wouldn't otherwise get. And then he flamed out. And so
then he goes on a redemption. He goes on a redemption tour like Petrino did when he's at Missouri State now.
Yes.
I think when he had like Western Kentucky too or something.
Yes.
That's where he went after the crap at Arkansas, right?
Yes.
So Hugh Freeze, I mean,
Louisville. Western Kentucky, then Louisville. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so you can say Hugh Freeze, maybe he got his little redemption tour up there at Liberty.
Yeah, just like maybe Lane Kiffin, even though he didn't really do anything wrong to that extent by any stretch, he just did some dumb things and was immature. He got his redemption tour at FAU, and completely, what did FAU do before he got there? What did they do after he got there? It's always a good measuring stick when you see head coaches elevate a program and then they collapse when that coach leaves. And then he comes to Ole Miss and yeah, they're not competing for a national championship, but this is pretty much Ole Miss's high water mark, other than when they cheated. This is Ole Miss's pretty much high water mark since 1960.
Okay, well, if you want to go by what did the program do before and what did the program do after, let's hire Scott Frost. I mean,
what program?
Scott Frost took Central Florida from 0-12 to 12-0 or 13-0.
Yeah.
And then now they haven't fallen completely off, but UCF is not the same as it was under Scott Frost. That's for sure.
Yeah, Scott Frost, that was in 2017. So the very next season. So he had one ridiculously good year.
Yeah, but when you go from 0-12 to 12-0,
that's an outstanding accomplishment. Absolutely, but it's not like he sustained success there. We don't know. He didn't.
Well, and that's the thing that we don't know because Nebraska came calling.
Sure.
I mean, we could have very well seen him, kind of build something up in Orlando that could have stood up.
Right.
Something like Peterson did for Boise.
Yeah. So if you were at Auburn, you're going after Hugh Freeze and who else?
I would, well, as far as like the at-larges, I'd go for over Kiffin. I'd knock on Matt Rule's door.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's probably got a number of places coming sniffing for him.
Sure. I think he's really good.
I mean, I've heard he's been linked to the Nebraska job. I've heard some mumbling about Wisconsin, but that was I think before. I think Jim Leonard's has he been officially offered that job yet? I heard
He did
that
get the job, didn't he?
I thought.
I'll have to double check on that.
I think he got the job.
Yes, he did. That was just a few days ago.
And then the elephant in the room is Coach Prime, which I would definitely take over Lane Kiffin.
Why?
Well, first of all,
what is he proven? You're looking for proven coaches.
Well, okay, so he doesn't have quite the background, but that what's going to come with him is, his kid looks to be a pretty damn good quarterback. You're going to get the number 1 overall recruit from last year, Travis Hunter. Plus, unless he goes somewhere where the cupboard is extremely bare, it looks like he's kind of set to win right out of the gate. Now, unfortunately, he's been linked to schools like Colorado, which is, the dumpster fire to end all dumpster fires. And I don't think South Florida is much better. But I think if he went to Auburn, which, a lot of people think is a pretty reasonable expectation. Because from what I've heard that, there's a lot of schools that have kind of soured on him because he had some sort of he was linked to some misappropriation with some education, some prime academy, something that I've heard about. So I've heard that that's kind of dumped on his potential for some of these other jobs. Okay. But the SEC, they kind of overlooked the moral stuff. I mean, I think that's kind of a history, though.
Well, that's supposed to be a history. I keep hearing that, and that might be correct. But I'm trying to think like a lot of things get thrown out like that, and there's not necessarily any confirmation of that, verification. Like, what are we talking? I'm trying to think. Who are we talking about? Who's been able to get a job in the SEC? Who's been shunned elsewhere because of the high moral ground that other conferences and universities take? I just don't know what that list is.
Well, I mean, this also transcends a lot of sports. What about Calipari? Darrell's not in there, is he? Because he's going to crap on me for that one. But Calipari's he's a scumbag.
Okay.
Kentucky couldn't wait to offer him a job.
Yeah, for good reason. Look at what they did.
Yeah, but he burned UMass to the ground.
Yeah.
Memphis wasn't much better either. In fact, didn't he leave with them both on sanction, probation, whatever?
Sure. Jackie Sherrill would be another example, but we're talking about 30 years ago. Like okay. Michigan State's had issues. Ohio State's had some issues off the field. Michigan's had some issues off the field in its history.
I don't recall that.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to talk. And Penn State had something. I don't know.
Yeah, we all know about that one. It seems like the Big Ten is the sex scandal conference now. Because Michigan State had Nassar. Apparently, we had a doctor that was playing a little too touchy-feely. Sandusky's a legend for all the wrong reasons. Ohio State had some band issues that I won't go into. Yeah, we've kind of gotten the public black eye.
Yeah.
But at least we're getting rid of this stuff.
Yeah. That's my only question when I hear something like that. I'm not saying that's incorrect.
And I don't think. Well, I'm on. Well, first of all, I don't know how Michigan State ever hired Tucker to begin with, especially at that contract. But if I'm Michigan State, I'm trying to find some way to get out of this. Some sort of buyout that doesn't drain me dry.
Well, I would wait until I made that decision.
Oh, you think that he's worth another chance?
Another chance? What do you mean? What's he done wrong? Another chance? Having like one marginal season?
Well, and the only season he's had any kind of success at.
He's been there for 3 years. He's been there for 2 full seasons. So he had a really, really good season, and he had a marginal to lousy season this year.
Yeah.
Are we firing coaches after one lousy year?
Didn't we just talk about Harsin?
Yeah, I'm not justifying him being fired. Well, it was 2 lousy seasons for him. And he didn't have an 11-2 top 10 finish.
Well, he also did that on D'Antonio's squad. Plus, he hit lightning in a bottle in the transfer.
He brought in 30 transfer portal players,
and one of them was named Kenneth Walker, which
sure,
pretty much it for him.
Yeah, why doesn't he get he gets criticized for Kenneth Walker leading the team to a top 10 finish? Why doesn't he get credit for bringing in Kenneth Walker? That's part of the deal. Talent acquisition.
Well, I do give him credit for that, especially because, he must have seen something because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he was blowing people out of their shorts at Wake Forest.
Well, no, he wasn't. However, not to pat myself on the back, but I'm on record here in a few videos of saying that was the best transfer portal pickup because I thought Kenneth Walker was really good at Wake Forest.
I just didn't see him as
no, he didn't have outstanding stats. He ran for 600 or 700 yards, but I saw him play a little bit or a lot and thought he was good. Okay, Mike, anything else?
Nope, that's all. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Good to see you. Have a good night. All right, Preem Sports. Mark, do you think Ken Dillingham is a good fit for Arizona State? Ken Dillingham being given a lot of credit for what's going on this year at Oregon, not giving much credit or given credit for some lousy work at Florida State. I don't have a great thought about Ken Dillingham. I'm not criticizing him. Again, he might be. Yeah, I don't have a good feel for that one way or the other. I don't know why you're looking at Ken Dillingham in particular, but maybe he's being talked about for Arizona State. That's the first time I've heard him linked to that job. But I appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much for that. We got Buckeye Mike. Look at that.
What's up, Mark?
Well, I immediately am drawn to that Reese's t-shirt.
What can I say? I love it.
Immediately drawn to that, even though I've had enough pumpkin pie and whipped cream.
Oh, I know, right? So first of all,
yes,
I want to say that I'm very thankful for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Because of the community and group of friends that you've built here. I've been given recently criticism from the family of jumping headfirst into this YouTube thing out of enjoyment. And I said, I'm not focused on this for the money because I'm nowhere near ready to make money from this. I'm doing this because y'all tell me I don't have any friends. And because of you, that has changed.
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you, Buckeye Mike. Thank you so much for that. And just like anything else, it can be used for good. It can be used for not so good things. But it's a technological tool for us to use to connect people and meet people. I think it's a good thing. Absolutely. So maybe they can call some night. I hope that your family comes around to seeing the benefits to all of this.
I hope so too. So I know Bama still technically has like possibly a New Year's Six to play for, even though they most likely won't be in a New Year's Six. So do you think that they show up for Auburn? Meaning, do you think it'll be a repeat from last year, or do you think that last year was just like a fluke? As far as like how everybody showed up and how close it was, because lately Alabama kills everybody.
So basically, Alabama shouldn't be motivated because they can't reach a New Year's Six game and most likely not a playoff. We've got a fairly recent example of that in 2019. They played in the Citrus Bowl against Michigan, and they had remarkably few opt-outs. They had 2 defensive opt-outs, and they had guys like Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs playing in that game, who were first-round NFL draft selections, and they went out and played an impressive, spirited game against Michigan in the Citrus Bowl. And I believe that team also – no, that 2019 team, they lost to Auburn because Mac Jones threw 2 pick sixes. Yeah, they lost that game like 48-45 on a missed field goal. Yeah, but they played hard. I haven't seen an Alabama team lay down. I've never seen that under Nick Saban.
I guess it not really – I guess like lay down or not show up is not the right term to use. But like I guess my main focus is like because of Alabama's positioning being what it is for this year, do we see a repeat of last year? Or was that just like a blue moon kind of thing?
A repeat of how close the game was against Auburn?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that game was on the Plains, and historically, Alabama has had all sorts of trouble winning games or blowing out Auburn on the road. They're playing this one at home. What was astounding about that Auburn effort last year was that, of course, Bo Nix got hurt with 5 games left in the season. People forget Brian Harsin and Bo Nix, they were 6-2 at one point in the season. And Bo Nix, in the game that they lost to drop to 6-3, he broke or badly sprained his ankle. I think it was an ankle. And they were up on Mississippi State by 25 points, and they blew that lead and blew the game and never won another game. But so they played with TJ Finley at quarterback, and he was hobbling on one leg in that Alabama game, and they still almost won with a third-string quarterback hobbling around on a bad leg. So that was pretty remarkable effort. My guess on this Alabama game, I don't typically give my predictions here because I save those for Patreon, but I'll
Can you give like a Kirk Herbstreit kind of prediction?
I'd say Alabama's going to win this game. I don't think that they're just going to annihilate Auburn because they haven't done that to anybody this year. But Auburn is so limited in the passing game. I think Alabama wins this game like 31-13.
That's almost kind of as close to annihilation as you could get without like Utah State annihilation.
I don't consider that an annihilation. 31-13. Let's see, the game's like 17-7 at half.
So this is not one of the questions that I wrote down, but talking about this game reminded me. First of all, maybe it's because I'm so hard with quarterbacks, but I feel like TJ Finley is not very good at all, and neither is the second string for Auburn.
Robbie Ashford. No, they're
I
not.
feel like yes, it's
and their
probably a
receiving core is
stretch.
not very good either.
I feel like, yes, it could be a stretch, but I feel like the best option would be to go with Zach Calzada, which makes me think, is it the style of offenses that are different as to why Calzada didn't go in there and just pull a Bo Nix and outright win the starting job, or was there something else to it?
Well, at some point in all of that, Calzada got hurt. I don't know if that's the only reason he lost the job or not. He hasn't played it down this year, Zach Calzada.
Yeah, that's what I'm confused about. I felt like, yes, the only film I remember on him is Alabama from last year, but I feel like he was a pretty good quarterback.
Pretty good quarterback, but you may want to go to Zach Calzada's game-by-game statistics last season, because if you take out the Alabama game,
They're not very
pretty
good.
much completed 50% of his passes with an equal number of touchdowns and interceptions against everybody else.
So Alabama last year was just kind of a fluke.
That was his game.
He just showed up for that game.
Yes, he absolutely did.
Okay. And then I feel like Ole Miss kind of shot themselves in the foot at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Because I feel like LK coached way too conservative, like Ryan has sometimes, with the 3 field goals. Were they just too far out to try to go for it or shoot for the end zone?
Yeah, Lane Kiffin does everything possible not to kick field goals. He's not a field goal guy, based on both the analytics and just he wants to go for it. And you can check the record. Just Ole Miss does not attempt many field goals. I watched the game. I'm trying to think of the situations. I don't think any of those fourth down situations in the red zone that Lane Kiffin had an opportunity to go for it. I think it was typically, 4th and 7, 4th and 9.
So in simpleton terms, it was just the best choice that he could make, even though he's not one to kick field goals.
Well, yeah, he's not going to. He obviously is a decent kicker. He made all the kicks. But, 4th and 8, 4th and 9, when you don't have to go for it, is not a high play.
Right. Makes sense. Because, he left 12 points or something on the board. I mean, hindsight is hindsight, but 12 points obviously wins you the game.
True. Yeah. Kicking field goals is, depending on how good your defense is and what kind of game it is, will sometimes cost you.
Speaking of that game, do you think there was some bad clock management on LK's part?
I didn't see the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game. Is that what we're talking about? Well, Jeffrey called in and brought that up. So based on the way Jeffrey explained it, I would say absolutely yes. And the reason is it's not just clock management, it's game management. If you're losing by 8 points, if you're as good as Lane Kiffin is at calling an offense, I would think that you could ask him halfway through the first quarter what his best 2-point conversion play is, and he would be able to tell you, or he would be able to tell you what his best 2-point conversion play is if he gets a certain kind of front, and how he may go to another play if he gets a different kind of look from the defense. Let alone the entire fourth quarter was played, or the last 10 minutes of the game was played at 24-16. So he's down by 8 points. He's got to be thinking the entire time, if we score, I got to go for 2. What am I going to do? What's my play? That's the only play in football where you know exactly what the situation is. you're on the 2-yard line, the 2.5-yard line. You have to score. You get one play. There's no situation to it. Clock doesn't matter. It's not 3rd and 10 or 4th and 1 or 2nd and 22. So you should already know what you want to do. And so for him to have called a timeout, now again, I didn't see it. Maybe his players screwed something up, or they had too many guys on the field, or whatever happened to cause him to call a timeout. That, based on what Jeffrey laid out in terms of time left in the game, that did not help. That basically killed 45 seconds that he would have had once they went on defense.
There was like 90 seconds left in the game when they scored.
Yeah.
So is my thinking correct? Because from what I remember that I've been taught about football, when you go into a huddle, you're given 2 plays. You have your primary play that you want to run.
Yeah.
And then mostly you see it more in the NFL. You have the kill play, your audible.
Yeah.
So I guess, yes, to a degree, it was too late in the game for it to necessarily matter when he scored, but I can't fathom and get over the wasting of 2 timeouts, because that makes me think that you had one play, you did not have an audible play to switch to. Because my thinking was the quarterback walks up to the line, he looks out and sees the format of the defense, the layout of the defense, and who's where, which with it being close enough to the goal line, usually everybody's just stacked in the box or on the edge of the box. And then when he would see the defense, he would just, bend over down towards the line to say the audible, bend over on the other side, say the audible, and go kill, 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 telling everybody else on the offense we're switching to play 2. So, and then for him to do it again, it's like, I don't understand it. I mean, I know it's hard for you to comment on this, but I don't understand it.
Yeah, well, I already commented on it. Just that, it's apparently a bad mistake, unless there was something else. And I would hope that Lane Kiffin was asked about it after the game, and I would like to hear his response to what happened.
Oh yeah, I would too. So do you think the game will be won in the trenches, or is there a more of a key somewhere else? I feel like the line of scrimmage, the trenches, is where this game will be won. Because usually sometimes it's in the trenches. It's, can the wide receivers be stopped? It's, will quarterback A for team A or quarterback B for team B have a better game? I feel like it's coming down to the fact that the lineman Michigan leaked that basically Corum most likely won't play, or he'll be limited if he does, which has made Harbaugh say that's a lie. I just feel like between Michigan's running back situation and Ohio State's running back situation, it's kind of, that's where the key to the whole thing is going to be.
Well, anytime people lay out keys to games, and there's all sorts of keys you can go through, it's obviously a combination of everything. Everything is a key to the game to some degree. If we were going to say it's all going to come down to how well Ohio State can stop the Michigan ground attack. Well, no, that's not all it's going to come down to. When I hear people say that on television and they say, this game's going to come down to, well, sure, that is going to be a key factor, but that's only one of 14 factors. And it might be at the top of the list, but that's not all that it's going to come down to. If Ohio State's rush defense plays a really good game and holds Michigan to 120 yards rushing, but Ohio State turns the ball over 4 times, or whatever scenario you want to play out. There's all sorts of factors. This is, for me, the number one factor, because unless I see a Michigan passing game that I've never seen before, and unless I see an Ohio State passing game from a negative standpoint that I've never seen before, I pretty much know that Ohio State has a solid advantage if you measure the two passing offenses against each other and against what they are as pass defenses too, which is Michigan's really good. Ohio State's nearly as good. I would rate Michigan's secondary to be a little bit better than Ohio State's. But I think we could argue the two front sevens against each other, and it would be a difficult argument to make either way.
Because it's funny you mention that, because I did a video yesterday talking about the quarterback comparison, and I gave the edge to CJ because JJ, from what we've seen, I could be wrong, we could all be wrong, but from what we have seen and what I've seen, JJ can't throw a deep ball worth of crap. Now, yeah, he was on target when he threw the deep ball to Andrell Anthony and it hit him like in the hands at the top of his helmet. But if he do what? Yeah.
He has the arm strength to make any throw on the field. He doesn't right now. He has not shown us the ability from an accuracy standpoint or a decision standpoint to throw to the right guy to make those throws on anywhere close to a consistent basis. So I would give CJ Stroud more than just an edge versus JJ McCarthy.
Well, I wouldn't say an edge, but I gave it to CJ. But and then as I was getting ready to do that, when I was doing research for that, I noticed the obvious of like why JJ essentially his passing stats look better than CJ to a degree. And it's the obvious point that everybody knows. Michigan is a run-heavy offense.
Where is JJ McCarthy's statistics better than CJ Stroud?
I would say it's the difference between his completions and attempts in comparable games. That's basically like the way you do it for the matchup as a whole is the way that I've gone. And but I mean, like I said, it's the fact, the reason there's such a bulky difference in CJ's favor is the way the offense is ran. Michigan is run first, run heavy. Ohio State is pass first, pass heavy, but we also can run the ball if we have to.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say to your previous question is that for me, the number one key to the game is the rushing difference between the two teams, meaning the team that runs more effectively in this game wins the game every year. However, I don't believe that Ohio State needs to run the ball as effectively as Michigan, but they can't have a game like they had last year where they ran for 2 yards per carry and Michigan ran for 7+ yards per carry. If Michigan runs for 4.5 yards per carry and Ohio State runs for 3.5 yards per carry, I'm going to consider that a win for Ohio State.
Right. I think it's got to be kind of like, I think you were saying, it's got to be like Michigan runs for an average of 6, Ohio State at least 4 or more. Yeah, the run game last year just looked bad. 2 yards per carry. God. I was talking with the guys over at Young Guns. And when we did,
by the way. I said it's a good name, by the way.
Oh yeah. They were talking about, I think it was last week, they were talking about Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma State. And Will mentioned, how long does Brent Venables last at Oklahoma? because it's not looking so good this year. And I, along with the rest of us on that show, basically were like, give him to have a first class, like all the way through. I mean, he's just getting started. It's his first job. I don't like how with some of these coaches, it's like, do good or you're gone. It's like, I'm gonna wring your neck until you're actually good. Like that.
Yeah.
And by that, I just mean like all the pressure on the coach. I mean, you're following Lincoln Riley, who followed Bob Stoops. There had to be some fall off point somewhere. Plus, he did take most of the coaches. He took all the offense.
Sure. Yeah, Oklahoma fans are not pleased with the season. I would not expect them to be, but it's his first season. I think that's completely and utterly ridiculous conversation to have.
Yeah, that's basically what I told him.
For Brent Venables. That doesn't mean that people can't say, well, I don't think he's going to be a good head coach, or I don't think he's going to get the job done. He may not. But in terms of saying that he should get fired or be on the hot seat, no.
Yeah, that's basically what I told him. And then everybody was like, yeah, that's a stupid question. And then last thing, because I know we've been on a while. Do you think it's easier to win with Nebraska or Auburn? And I think that Meyer should come back to save his legacy because, as you said in the Nebraska video, that's Jacksonville is a big tarnish on his legacy. Or at least it's a
question. That's a great question about Nebraska versus Auburn. So it's more difficult to win at Auburn based on the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing in the toughest schedule in the country versus the Big Ten Western Division. But that is going to change to some degree because the Big Ten will probably get rid of divisions and USC and UCLA are coming. It's easier to acquire talent at Auburn. There's no question about that. Auburn, with all of its problems, has not had a dry spell like Nebraska has. I'm going to say it's tougher to win in Nebraska than it is at Auburn.
Because I know what led me to the question was, yes, the schedule, but you had mentioned also in that video with the Nebraska guy that recruiting would just be too hard. Like, who would want to go out into the middle of nowhere, USA, and play at Nebraska? It was basically the gist of what I got from that portion.
Yes. Now, depending on what the standard is, Nebraska gets fine football players, and they have in this modern era of recruiting. They have been able to recruit on the level of Wisconsin and Iowa, 25th in the nation, something in that range. But that doesn't cut it at Auburn. And Auburn has been able to pull in under Gus Malzahn and previous coaches top 10 classes on a regular basis, fairly regular basis. Yeah, there's just more players there. It's not even close. Okay, Buckeye Mike, appreciate you being here.
No problem. Thanks again, Mark.
Good night. Sure.
You too.
All right. We got David Greenfield on the line. David, how you doing?
Excellent, Mark. I thought I watched you on Dace this week. I thought you were going to sport the Troy Smith / Art Schlichter / Rex Kern jersey. I was kind of hoping that would make its yearly appearance on the Steve Dace show. I got to say, I was a little bit disappointed.
/ Philly Brown?
Well, I wanted to keep it in the quarterback realm,
okay.
Mark.
All right.
I wanted to keep it within the quarterback realm.
Well, yeah, I just didn't make the effort.
That's okay. I mean, I just thought you'd be, I know you're trying to keep that unbiased thing going, and I know you don't want to disappoint your largest fan base here on the channel, unfortunately, but
it sure appears that way. I'm going to release those numbers at the end of the year. I'm going to go through. YouTube does all that for you, and I'm going to go through and just see which videos produce the best, and also, look at the various channels and which channels are growing at which numbers and lay it all out there, because we do have a large contingent of Miami fans, especially not necessarily here, but on the Miami channel, that just brag to me all the time how they are just like the flagship channel.
Yeah, I thought you had like 85 Miami shows for like a period of time there, Mark. It seemed like you had like a Miami show every day on Mark Rogers. No, I hear you.
Whatever.
By the way, it's kind of gotten me nostalgic this week, Mark. I don't know if you do the same thing and go back and watch the old games or do a little bit of that.
I don't have that kind of time, but I will say, if you do one of these, do you see what's on the Big Ten Network right now?
Yeah, I'm actually watching it on the Big Ten Network.
Yes.
Urban Meyer's first year, they go undefeated. Yeah,
well, it brings back some memories, huh?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I'm sure the Team Up North fans do not remember the Brady Hoke era too fondly well.
That was a big offensive first half, and then things just kind of settled down in the second half. It was 21-20 at half and only 2 field goals in the second half then.
Yeah, that team got better as the year wore on, by the way. It did. I mean, it won a lot of close games that year, but it got better as the season wore along. I never thought it was a national championship worthy, type team. But, I thought, you could see that, first of all, Jim Tressel did not leave the cupboard too bare for Urban Meyer to begin with, by the way.
No, he did not. A few things about that. Number one, I have raised the question to our guys on our Buckeye show, and shame on me for not really remembering the explanation of Gene Smith's decision to play in a bowl game in 2011, just because I would think if that's as clear cut as it appears to be on the surface, I don't know why he doesn't take more heat for that.
I think he should. And then the only explanation that I've ever heard was they were unsure of what the penalty was going to be, or if, what was going to happen.
Still, was it that crucial to play in the Gator Bowl?
I agree. It was a meaningless game against a very average Florida team that didn't even need to be played after a very disappointing season.
And don't get me wrong. If there were no circumstances involved and it's just Ohio State had a bad year and they're 6-6, do I want to go to a bowl game? Yeah, I want to go see them play a bowl game and see another game. I always want to see them play. But under those circumstances, and you're bringing in Urban Meyer, you're going to take a postseason bid away from him, and you're going to give it to not the Luke Fickell of 2022, Luke Fickell of 2011. It's just mind-boggling to me.
What was worse was sitting through that bowl game against Florida, which was well, I could be worse. I could have talked about the last game against Florida other than that one, but it's interesting this week. I watched that BTN Network special tiebreaker. I watched a replay of the 06 game, which was unbelievable. Which, by the way, just a ton of NFL talent in that 06 game. Just blows me away to this day. What's crazy, Mark, is I always think about that 06 game was a shift for the Big Ten, and that's when the SEC run of dominance started.
Yes.
As unfortunately as Ohio State fans remember.
I still remember a comment that Kirk Herbstreit made after the 06 national championship game, because I believe that he picked Ohio State. Practically everyone in the world did. They were a 7-point favorite in that game. And if this was November of 2006, there was not any definitive best conference.
Right.
The Big Ten, you could make an argument. Actually, Penn State beat Tennessee and Wisconsin beat Arkansas. Whether
I think that was a Citrus or Capital One.
Yes, something like just days before the national championship game. So I thought it was ridiculous for Kirk Herbstreit. Sure, that was a stunning loss, embarrassing loss, fill in the blank, whatever adjective you want to use. But I remember Kirk Herbstreit saying after that game that this put the Big Ten in the likes of Conference USA. He just had this, and I was like, what are you talking about? One result of the best team, and maybe he was pairing that with the Rose Bowl result of Michigan and USC. but it was a bit overdone.
Yeah, you know,
yeah.
and that's really where the narrative also started.
Oh, sure it did.
And you know, the crazy thing about it was, and I always said this to this day, I watched Florida play 5 times that year, maybe even 6 games. And Mark, did you ever think to yourself that that was that great of a football team?
No.
I'm sorry, and I'd even say that to Urban Meyer, and I love Urban Meyer, obviously. But I watched Florida struggle with a mediocre Florida State team that year, lose by 10 points at Auburn to a mediocre Auburn team, barely win at Tennessee by 1 point that year to an average Tennessee team.
Yeah.
I mean, they were struggling to beat some average teams.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know if they were average teams.
Well, I mean, no, the teams that they were, I mean, Auburn was not that good in 06. Florida State was really down in 06. I think they were basically about a 500 club. And Tennessee, I think, went 8-3 or 9-3 that year. But I mean, they weren't, you know, the Tennessee of this year or something.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Mean,
although their defense in that championship game, and then all those guys got plucked up in the first couple rounds of the NFL draft.
Yeah. Wasn't it crazy? Michigan beats them the next year in what was Lloyd Carr's the last game. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it a little bit, and then I want to talk about a couple of games this week with you, Mark. You know, I go in with a confidence this weekend that redemption is here for us. I think that the defense is a lot better than it was a year ago. I think that the defensive line, as I've told you, I like a lot about this defense. I think the defensive line's better. It's got playmakers on it. Linebacker plays better. I even like the safety play better. The only thing I don't like about this defense is the corners. And by the way, I remember being on with a Team Up North fan a few weeks ago when I said the tricky games for both teams would be Illinois in the week before and Maryland for Ohio State the week before. So, you know, I think that this Ohio State defense, with its linebacking core, with its safeties, and with its D-line, is far more capable of at least containing the run this year than it was a year ago.
Oh, absolutely. It's not debatable. It's the pair of linebackers, Chambers and Eichenberg, are playing so well. The defensive front, I think I made the comment to you, I'm sure I did, a number of times during our off-season conversations that, you know, this Ohio State defensive line, living up to its potential, could be a devastating front. I don't know if they've lived up to that, but on occasion and in the clutch, they have been. They've wrecked offenses when it's counted.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I would say is they've obviously, the 2 games where they've given up, you know, north of 30 points have been to teams that threw the ball against them. Clifford had the big day at Penn State.
Yeah.
And then obviously little Tua had the big week last week, which wasn't a surprise because Maryland's got NFL wide receivers. Jarrett and Demas and those guys are going to be playing on Sunday.
Sure they are.
So, and by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, Maryland did throw the ball fairly well against the team up north and scored 27 points in that game.
Absolutely.
So that's also gives me confidence. Ohio State's been really good in pass pro this year. Obviously, they don't have a Jabo and Hutchinson to worry about that they did a year ago. I think they can hold up a little bit better in pass protection this year than a year ago.
Yeah, maybe in pass protection, but Michigan's defense is playing slightly better overall.
I would agree with that. The only thing that I would say about Ohio State from an offensive standpoint, I think their offensive line might be slightly better, at least in pass protection, than it was a year ago.
I'll agree with that because I can't fault them in pass protection this year.
Right.
Not that they haven't had a couple of breakdowns, but it's impossible to keep a quarterback clean for an entire season. They've been about as clean as you can be for a team that passes as much as Ohio State.
Last comment real quick on the game, though, Mark, too. And then I want to get to a couple of games this week. Thought, by the way, that Ohio State could be going into a game against them without JSN and Trey Henderson and be a 7.5 point favorite. If you'd have said that back in August, how many people would have been buying that?
Dallin Hayden has become an X factor and I don't even know if that's the right terminology because he may have to be the major back, and he's not that much of an X factor after what he proved last week. But who would have thought that we would be talking maybe more about Dallin Hayden than any other player on the Ohio State side?
Yeah, I think it'll be a mixture of Hayden and maybe a little bit of Mayan Williams on Saturday. Want to get to the games this weekend. And also want to broach a playoff scenario with you.
Okay.
Klatt and Coward talked about the USC Notre Dame game this weekend, and Coward, I believe Klatt already called it. He thinks Notre Dame goes in there and wins.
Yeah.
I think that USC is hanging on by a thread. You watched most of the UCLA USC game last week.
Oh yeah.
If fair to say, USC just was, in a word, fortunate to get out of that one.
Well, DTR, I thought was exceptional at times, but he wasn't, of course, consistent enough and threw the ball right to them a number of times.
Yeah.
For one
By the
thing.
way, no, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mark.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, but I mean, with USC, with losing the running back, their starter for the entire year, with the way Notre Dame looks up front, I think that they're kind of built, and this is the case that those two were making, that they're built to play and take advantage of maybe USC's weaknesses.
My concern for Notre Dame is that they can't get behind, and I just don't know what would keep USC from not respecting the pass and loading up to stop the run, because I just haven't seen it from Drew Pine downfield.
Yeah, but where are you at on USC's overall defense right now?
Oh, it's
yeah, I mean, that's where I'm going with this.
Even against teams like Arizona State, Arizona, Cal, they've been ripped up the second half of the season.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. By the way, would have loved to have love those Pac-10 overs this year, Mark. Wouldn't you know, I didn't play that last week.
Oh, didn't play that one. That one was what, like 74, 75?
Exactly. It ends up being what, 93?
Yeah.
I mean, ridiculous. Yeah, I would not be surprised. I think that's a one-possession game down to the wire. What do you think?
I believe so. If there's a blowout, it's going to be in USC's favor, but I don't expect that. Notre Dame has typically played up to its competition. They have played up to its competition. They lost to Marshall. They lost to Stanford. And they played Ohio State well. I still think, and they need to be downgraded and critiqued and criticized for their losses, but I really think that Ohio State game took a lot out of them. I think that they just geared up for that one in week one, but they've played up to a certain extent to Ohio State, of course, Clemson, North Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like a football team that Marcus has gotten that team better as the season's gone along. I'll tell you what, if he could ever find an offensive coordinator at Notre Dame to run his offense, develop a quarterback, which obviously is his next big hire, he's got to get right.
Yeah.
That's when they could maybe kick it up another level.
Yeah. And USC, this is going to be, things are getting down to the wire now. I don't know how they're going to respond to that. Those guys haven't played in high stakes games to this degree.
Right. Well, your USC guys seem to think that they've been playing with house money the entire year. That's basically, this is that year where we maybe lose a couple of games, we win the Pac-10, and then our move for the playoff is within the next 2 or 3 years, after obviously Lincoln Riley's had a couple of recruiting classes to where he can build the team up.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I picked USC to go to the playoff or anything, but once the season started to unfold, it was only a couple weeks into the season that I thought, look at that schedule and look at how good they are on offense. And I thought, like, this doesn't surprise me. And so they got past the one big hurdle here, the first of 3. So really there's more resistance in these final two games than their entire season to date, because really they haven't played that tough of a schedule. It's all backloaded.
Right. Right. I agree with you. Although, you know what? Obviously, if they run the table, win the Pac-12 title game, probably a good chance that they're automatically in, I would think.
I would hope so. I hope they're going to be in the playoff if they earn it with a Pac-12 championship and a win over Notre Dame. Sure. I want to see them there.
Well, that leads me to I wasn't going to talk about another game. I wanted to give a playoff scenario here before I let you go.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about the implications of the loser for tomorrow. Have you on your 1,000,005 legal pads and all that paper that you've got there, Mark, drawn up the scenario for the loser to make the playoff tomorrow?
When you say tomorrow, you mean
I'm Saturday. My bad.
Yeah.
I'm already there, Mark.
Technically, it is tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you heard the comment I made to an earlier caller. Was I saw on ESPN that Ohio State's got it was a really high percentage, 88% chance of making the playoffs, and Michigan's was like 64.
Right.
Well, they're telling us right there, if ESPN knows anything, and they're obviously in bed with the whole system, that the loser has a great chance of making the playoff. Okay. Now we got to draw up a reasonable scenario for that.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if bottom line, obviously the first domino is for Georgia to just be the only SEC team, run through it, beat LSU in the title game. So there's your one seed right there. Obviously, I think it would help if TCU loses in the title game or loses within the next couple weeks.
Especially if they lose in the title game.
Okay.
Because they will not be a champion.
Right. If they lose in the title game, Kansas State possibly, right, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. Who had them? I mean, they were up on them big.
Yeah, and especially if they lose to Kansas State, it's going to tell the committee, okay, well, this is the team that had them by 18 points, and they had their two quarterbacks get hurt in that game, and then they beat them when they were healthy at quarterback.
Right. Right. So, I mean, if Kansas State gets them, I really thought Baylor was going to get them last week, Mark. I mean, I peeked in on that game, and boy, were they so lucky to get that field goal off. Talk about clock management. It could have been a disaster at its worst. You believe that?
Yes. Yeah.
That was bad.
Yeah.
But, okay, so you think that's one of the dominoes that needs to fall, is that TCU gets out the way?
Well, if they don't, then not necessarily, but you're going to need then those are your four spots. Georgia, Ohio State is the big, or the winner of the Big Ten, and then TCU, and then obviously the other spots got to go to make our scenario come true, has to go to the loser of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Clemson can lose to North Carolina. Clemson can lose to South Carolina. So Clemson has two decent opponents that they're playing. And I think we would both agree that Clemson is better than those teams, but not significantly. And we've seen Clemson play football all season.
Well, I think where they drop Clemson in the rankings makes it even more of an issue for Clemson to climb back up. See, the only scenario where I could see Clemson gets in, and I think this is plausible, is if USC loses to Notre Dame this week or loses in the title game.
Yeah.
Okay. TCU loses in the title game. Okay. And then you're left with undefeated Georgia as a 1 seed. Okay. I'm going with Ohio State, wins the game, undefeated as the 2 seed. And then Clemson would be a 1-loss champion that would be left out there. And then you'd have 1-loss team up north, wouldn't you?
Sure. And currently they sit at 3-8, correct?
Correct.
So if, of course, the committee is telling us that Ohio State's the second best team in the country, and let's say Michigan loses by a field goal on the road,
mm-hmm.
and Clemson has defeated a 7-5 South Carolina team and a 10-2 North Carolina team. The committee is 13 people that have to come out with a consensus, and I guarantee that some of them will opt for a conference champion every time over a non-conference champion, but I don't know where that sits with the committee. Like you say, they're giving us a strong indication between 3 and 8, but sometimes they, as soon as a team wins a conference championship, they pop them up.
Yeah, the thing about it is that I do wonder if, one of those two things happens. USC loses, okay. If they would then take the loser. So if all you're left with is an undefeated TCU, an undefeated Georgia, and then an undefeated Ohio State, are you going to take the one-loss team up north over Clemson, who won the ACC? If USC gets eliminated this weekend, let's say.
I think that there are people in that room that always want the champion. I don't know how many there are, but they're always going to take a champion with the same record. And number two, there are people in that room that want to punish Michigan for not scheduling anyone. And it is Clemson.
Okay. So by that rationale, would they be more likely to take Ohio State if?
Yes.
Okay.
If they lose.
Right.
The one check mark in Michigan's column would be that their loss would come on the road.
That was the other point I was going to make. If they lose a close game to the number 2 team in the country by less than a touchdown, with maybe some key injuries or, with their situation, that's a case for them.
But on the other hand, of course, Ohio State's considered the better team right now. But by how much, we don't know. If that's a significant 2 versus 3, or if it's just kind of like they're tied and they have to choose someone. And Notre Dame helps out Ohio State the more that they can look impressive and win.
Right. But really plummeting Clemson to 8 just shows you what the committee thinks about Clemson, doesn't it, Mark? I mean, just bottom line.
I think that's mostly eyeball test. That's obviously eyeball test because they've never really looked good in any game this season. Like really dominant good. They look good. They're a good team, but they kind of beat everyone by 10 points.
That's true. I mean, they were kind of hanging on by like a needle's thread. I was not surprised at all that they lost at Notre Dame. I mean,
and that's what I was going to say. Of course, that's an egregious loss. That's an Ohio State-Purdue game. They got whacked. If they go to Notre Dame and they lose, by 1 score and Notre Dame continues to elevate like they have, then they're not going to punish Notre Dame or Clemson in such a way that they have.
Yeah, you're talking point differential, though. I would say 22 Notre Dame is probably a better team than 2018 Purdue.
Oh, they are. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping for a great weekend of college football. As always, go Buckeyes, beat the team up north, and let's get back together on Saturday and talk about a great Buckeye victory, Mark Rogers.
Let's do that, David. We appreciate you being here. Go Bucks, and certainly enjoy the game.
Thank you, my friend.
And continue to enjoy if you choose to relish in some memories from the past.
Absolutely, Mark. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Good to hear from David. We'll get to our final 2 calls, and maybe we bring them both on at the same time. I don't know if they want to talk at the same time. DeReal and Will, you talk about these guys can have their own show if they want. Will already does, of course. Carl Dunn, thank you so much for the super chat. I apologize that it's taken me forever to get to it, so you may be like snoozing by now, but you can watch the replay. Go Tigers. Does Brian Kelly have a chance at National Coach of the Year? I surely hope not. No, he's not the National Coach of the Year. And I understand your point. He's doing a nice job. He's got a top 7 or 8 roster in the country. So I understand they only had 39 scholarship players last year during the bowl game. They didn't play with 39 scholarship players the whole season. That was during the bowl game after they had a bunch of opt-outs and injuries. Yes, the bowl game. They didn't play with 39 scholarship players during the season. But Brian Kelly's doing a nice job. Where did I hear it? I wish somebody could clarify this for me, if this actually came from the committee. I heard that somebody in the committee, it would be the chairman, he's the only one that's allowed to speak, because if they allowed all of them to speak, then you'd be able to say, oh, wait a minute, she said that doesn't jive with, they would be a train wreck if we got to hear from all of them. But of course, they're all what legal term am I looking for? Anyway, it's on the tip of my tongue. And we only hear from the first one. What was my point going to be in all that? I had a point to make. That's okay. Yes, Brian Kelly, not the national coach of the year. Oh, I heard that the committee said that that game against Florida State doesn't really count. They don't really consider that. They don't consider it. That's the quote I heard. They don't consider. What was that? Was that the only exhibition game that's ever been played in the history of college football? That was a preseason game. They just didn't tell us at the time. That was a preseason game. I don't get it. I don't understand. DeReal, we'll bring Will in here too. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing good, Mark. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving with your family.
I did. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Hope you guys did as well.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Will and Mark.
Yeah.
Yes.
Happy Thanksgiving
to everyone. Did you guys hear that the committee made that statement that they're not considering the LSU Florida State game? I heard that from somebody. Oh man, Uncle Rico's telling us, and this is a good point. They need to televise the committee.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great ratings.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I think they should release the ballots of every member. That way we see who exactly votes where.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? If you asked for that, DeReal, you know what their response would be? Their response would be, we don't vote. We talk about it. We discuss it. And then we come to a consensus. That's what they would tell you. There's not a consensus.
But yeah, they say they have disagreement in the room. How can you have disagreement in the room if you come to a consensus?
But they talk it out. It almost sounds like for 15 years, I was in production operations management at ESPN. And yeah, when we left the room, the message was, we have a consensus. We came to it. No, I was half the time saying this is a stupid thing to do. But so we didn't have a consensus, but we had to tell people we did, which I didn't. I would tell people the truth. Say, no, we don't have a consensus, but we got to come to a decision. We can't be in there for like 14 days. So anyway, you guys.
So unlike Tim, Tony, Jeff, and Rick, I do not want USC to get in the playoffs, and I do not want USC to win this Saturday night in LA.
Well, I was pulling for you last night in that.
Yeah. You helped me a bit. I had a really bad gaffe by not remembering that Drake May was dual threat. But yeah, you helped me out with that. But yeah, I was kind of stressed out. I was like, what am I going to say? How am I going to respond to them?
It's going to be a fun game to watch because I can see this going either way, of course. Either team could win this game. But I think maybe those USC guys underestimate the physicality of Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. Because I feel like if they stack the box, like our tight ends and our receivers have been doing such a great job blocking, I feel like we'll still be able to get big runs off, even if they stack.
I got to say, I have not seen Notre Dame play since the Clemson game. And that was such a, for this day and age, such a non-quarterback centric game on Notre Dame's side. You know, they're blocking kicks. Their defense is just running over them. The rushing offense was dominant, all of that. I don't even remember what Drew Pine did in that game.
He had one good pass to Jane Thomas. That was really about it. And he ran a touchdown in as well and threw one to Michael Mayer.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what Drew Prine did because Indy's offensive line was so dominant, and that's what I'm expecting against USC. They're like, we'll just load the box up. We'll double Mayer. It's like, Yeah, they'll get pancaked on the ground, and there'll be an 8-yard run every time he touches the ball. I just don't see how, styles make fights, is the old saying.
Yeah.
This just happens to be a bad matchup for USC.
I hope so. I have a question for you, Mark. Do you think that this season for Tennessee is a flash in the pan? Do you think that is this like a 2019 LSU for them, or do you think they can keep it? They're going to keep it rolling with Josh Heupel.
Well, it's certainly a poor man's version of LSU.
Yeah, of course.
I thought it was the real thing. I was going to say the real deal, but that sounded too much like the real MVP. I had that once they started to beat some good teams, and even before the Alabama game, and of course the Alabama game was kind of the stamp of approval. Like, oh, you beat Alabama, like this is legit. And before that was LSU, and then of course LSU helped them by LSU looking better, and that's when I was kind of sold on them being really good, and Josh Heupel just being this savior of the program, even more so than just this team being good. But
well, you went exactly where I wanted to go with this with Tennessee. Obviously, the answer's no. They're completely irrelevant now, according to the Patreon poll committee. They don't deserve to be in the 12-team playoff. They're just horrible. They're probably going to lose to Vandy. They shouldn't even be in the top 25. My goodness.
Well,
Washington better than Tennessee. Let's put that out there right now.
It would be a competitive game, I think, but just because of what South Carolina did, and Washington's a better team than South Carolina. So,
are we as a Notre Dame fan using transitive property with bad teams?
I'm not. I'm
really
just saying, like, with how bad their defense looked against South Carolina, what will Michael Penix do?
Okay, then Bowling Green beat Marshall. Marshall beat Notre Dame. Therefore, Bowling Green is better than Notre Dame.
How do we even get? Wait,
it is tough to make a comparison between the Pac-12 and the SEC. It is. So those two conferences have played 3 times. And
yeah, it's not like the 11th or 12th best team in one conference beat the top 5 team in another conference or anything like that. Or even 2 evenly matched teams won by almost 50.
And in no way do I want to make a narrative out of 3, but in all 3 games, we had just a decisive SEC outcome. And then we have history to know we've arrived at this place and nothing's really changed. And I think the Pac-12 has improved considerably.
I'm going to throw this out, Drew.
It's a really strong league, but I'm not so sure just because Washington looks good against who they've looked good against that if you throw them in the middle of that conference, things would be considerably different.
I want to throw this out there, Darrell. Do you think? I feel like the SEC is just a more talented Pac-12. I feel like the styles of the games that they play are pretty similar these days. I feel like it's become very offensive driven. The SEC has, and the defense. I'm not going to say has taken a back seat, but they're not as dominant as they used to be. Do you think that's a bad take?
Generally agree with that statement. It's not Big 12 levels of 5-6 years ago where every game's 55-52 or something like that, but I would imagine if you looked at the scoring trends for the SEC, they would be increasing over the last few years.
Sure. They are everywhere.
Yeah. But with Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia's defense is probably the only exception to the rule.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Even Vanderbilt scored 20-some points in the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So good for them.
I want them to beat Tennessee so bad just so I can laugh at the Tennessee fans. That would be hilarious.
If they lose to Vandy?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, they lost their starting quarterback, and I mean, injuries are an unfortunate thing, and it's a part of a football game, but if they say they lose their starting quarterback, I feel like it's somewhat legitimate that.
Well, it's legitimate to consider that they're not nearly as good a team, but they shouldn't be losing to Vandy even with their backup quarterback. Mm-hmm. And their backup quarterback's Joe Milton, who's horrible.
Yeah.
So if Vandy wins this game, I'm not going to be totally stunned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not either. I mean, the way Kentucky looked against Vanderbilt, I mean, Kentucky got outbeat by Vandy, and credit to them, and Vanderbilt's really turned it around. They got a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to – he might be the SEC Coach of the Year.
Clark Lee?
Yeah, if he goes 6-6, I mean, he's got to get some
Oh,
consideration.
if they beat Tennessee and they beat Kentucky.
No, not Kentucky.
Who they beat in the middle. Yeah, Florida and Tennessee. That'd be crazy.
Now, Darrell, I have to ask you this. How confident are you that you're going to win the Governor's Cup?
About 85%.
85?
85.
I thought that was like a flip of the coin.
Well, I'm pretty sure Malik Cunningham's out for the game against
Okay.
And if he's out, I think their backup's also out. I'm not sure about that.
Your backup is also out, Doman?
Yeah, I think they got some guy named Brock in. They had some guy named Brock in against NC State.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Well, they won. They did beat NC State.
Yeah, but NC State lost their starting center. They had their backup quarterback out, their backup quarterback out, their starting quarterback out, their wide receiver 1 out, their wide receiver 2 out, and their starting running back out.
Mm-hmm.
So basically their entire offense was out against Louisville.
Yeah.
And the only touchdown Louisville scored in the first half was that one play where they punted it off and the ball went behind the Louisville player. He picked it up at the 2-yard line and he ran all the way back for a touchdown. It was a great play, but I mean, it wasn't like Louisville was an offensive powerhouse.
So, Darrell, if you're Lane Kiffin, are you staying at Ole Miss or are you going to Auburn? Because at Auburn, I just think the expectations are too unrealistic. They expect you to at least beat Georgia or Alabama every year. And at Ole Miss, like, I feel like you might not be able to get to that level that you can with Auburn because I feel like the ceiling is higher at Auburn. But I don't know. For me, I would stay at Ole Miss still just because the expectations.
Well, did you hear the press conference that Lane Kiffin had after the game?
I did not.
It seems like he's going to stay at Ole Miss.
Okay.
He was asked if the Auburn job was available, if he accepted it, and he said he expects to be at Ole Miss next year. So, you know, that could be coach speak. I don't trust him if he said he was leaving or staying, but it's got to weigh in some way or another.
Yeah, well, if he stated it like that, other coaches, you know, Lincoln Riley being one, have found other ways to phrase those things so that they can kind of make it more vague. But it's not like he's being forced out at Ole Miss. So if he expects to be at Ole Miss next year, he is the only one that can decide that he won't be at Ole Miss next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ole Miss, I mean, they got a good team. It's just, I don't know what's really happened at the end of their season because maybe it's just the schedule got super hard on them and they were kind of exposed a bit. Injuries, questionable coaching decisions, but
yeah,
they've looked worse these last few weeks than they have at the beginning of the year. I expected them to lose a few games and go like 9-3, but the eye test hasn't passed for me. Has that been the same way with you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to look too good when you're losing to Arkansas 35-3 or whatever it was at one point in that game.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Arkansas season would have gone better. I think that Texas A&M loss just turned into multiple other losses.
Well, and they lost KJ Jefferson for a while.
Yeah.
Tim's making a comment here. It says, Mark likes to compare the Pac-12 to the SEC, but I don't hear them comparing the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12. Okay, here's the deal, Tim. The only time I've ever compared the Pac-12 to the SEC is when it's been thrown in my face that LSU's overranked and Tennessee's overranked. That's the only time. I have not come on here ever and just started comparing the SEC and the Pac-12. That has never come out of my mouth. I have had to be asked something or it's been presented to me in such a way that I've had to make that comparison because...
Yeah, well, if you want me to quickly compare them, SEC won just by resume. So I think Big Ten's the second best conference, but the results haven't shown that. So SEC 1, Big 12 2, Pac 12 3, Big 10 4, ACC 5.
I think that's reasonable. I won't completely confirm that because I'd like to look at all the results, but yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right, and we'll see what the bowl situation, how that plays out, the bowl games, and we've got an ACC SEC weekend coming up with 4 games this weekend.
I think I'll be shocked if, besides Georgia Tech, I think all the ACC teams should win, right, Mark? Or am I missing something?
Well, we
Thanks,
got
Will.
the real just said.
Well, oh crap! Yeah, Kentucky. Okay, so that one's a 50-50 or maybe 60-40. But
Yeah.
I definitely think that I don't know. I just can't see South Carolina or
No, I don't
Florida
either.
winning.
Yeah,
But you got to look at seedings to make it fair. You know, Florida's one of the worst teams in the SEC. They're playing maybe the second best team in the ACC.
Mhm.
And Louisville is certainly higher seeded in the ACC than Kentucky is in the SEC. And certainly, obviously, Clemson's the best team in the ACC, and South Carolina is the whatever they are in the SEC, the 7th best team, the 8th best team. So they're not really fair fights.
Yeah.
And Georgia Tech's obviously one in the SEC's column. That's not a fair fight.
Right. Poor
So.
Georgia Tech. They could have made a bowl game this year, but their non-conference schedule. I don't know why they scheduled Ole Miss out of conference.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
They
should
might
have.
be able to make it because of academic progress, right? Isn't Georgia Tech a pretty strong school?
Yes.
I understand that, but can't they schedule somebody out of conference just to get that 6 win?
Yeah.
They've some years when they've had this is the ACC doing this to them. If I'm Georgia Tech, I'm going to the ACC office and saying, you know what? If you're not going to force Notre Dame to join our conference, then this is ridiculous. We play Georgia, and then you throw us Notre Dame like every other year, and we got to play both of them.
Mm-hmm. The Rudy game made it. Maybe it's because of the Rudy game that we always play Georgia Tech. I don't know.
Well, remember what I said, Mark? What they should do with Notre Dame? Just freeze them out. Just freeze them out. They can play their glorified Group of 5 schedule. Notre Dame can enjoy being at the best, the 5th highest rated team going forward.
That's what I would do too. I would talk to Notre Dame and say, what conference do you want to join? We'll throw you in any one you want. Like if there was a governing body of college football, they would approach Notre Dame if I had anything to do with it. Say, which conference do you want to be in? We'll let you in any conference if you really. I think you belong in the Big Ten, but if you want to stay in the ACC, that's fine.
It would be fun if we could just rotate Power 5 conferences every year. Like 1 year we play ACC.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an idea.
Will, how does it feel that in the future you could beat Ohio State, Clemson, North Carolina this year and still be ranked behind 2 of those 3 teams in the 12-team playoff?
I don't care. Well, we can still win. And if we win, we can have an even better argument. Like, haha, we were ranked behind these teams and we still won. So, yeah.
Oh, man, you're going to brag about beating Tulane or UCF or something like that? Is that where it's gone down to where Notre Dame needs to get a big bowl win? Just beating them is considered brag material?
Notre Dame's going to be like a 9 or 10 seed in that thing every year.
Maybe. I think they would be the 5 seed some years. Because if they're a top 4 team
last year,
then they would automatically get pushed down to 5.
Yeah.
And then they would have to play the Group of 5 team, who's probably the 30th or 40th best team on the good year. Which, Mark, we give the committee tons of rag, but at least they put Tennessee in the top 10. At least they did that.
I've got Tennessee at I forget where I've got them. I still have them.
7.
I know I'm insane, but I still have them ranked ahead of Alabama and LSU.
Yeah, I know. It's not like head-to-head matters in this sport or anything. We got way too many games. We can just ignore head-to-head because there's anything about college football. It's the amount of games these teams play. It's too many.
I failed to record the committee rankings, the ESPN show, but I'm hoping Reese Davis asked the committee chairman. You got LSU at 5, and now Tennessee's at 10. They're 5 spots different.
We should have Tony list out all the polls in like the corner of the presentation. Because I feel like, I mean, mine's probably more reasonable than to the SEC than most.
Yeah, I would like to see it. He said and congrats.
I didn't submit a poll
people, and
last
I'm not
week.
attacking any of them, but he said somebody voted Tennessee at 15. How? How's that possible? You're putting 3 lost teams ahead of Tennessee? 3 lost teams?
Oh.
It would be fun if we could play Tennessee. That would be a good game.
I know that would be a good game. Well, I mean, you would actually get to see what an offense looks like for once in your lifetime.
Oh, that's
this year.
cute, buddy. That's cute. All right.
I know you get to see USC this week, and they have a great offense. What Tennessee? You would see the top 3 offenses in the country: Ohio State, Tennessee, and USC. And you would see all their great quarterbacks, because I always hear from people like always Irish that Notre Dame can't recruit a 5-star quarterback.
Well, we're getting CJ Carr, so hopefully we can develop him. I love Always Irish, though. He's fun.
Oh yeah, he's a good guy. I listen to his shows afterwards. His energy levels, what I like.
Our guy John Kennedy, absolutely, he's a good guy.
Yeah,
that's right.
You should have him on after see if he can do the post game with Will.
I hope so.
I'll ask him. Do you guys talk to him at all? I
tweeted at him hoping he could get in the Pac-12 show, but he didn't respond.
Okay.
Well, that's sad, because I know Pigskin Pete and him did something for the Clemson Notre Dame. Like Pigskin Pete called into his show for the Notre Dame Clemson game. So maybe
he called in right after I did that day on Always Irish.
Yeah, and Clemson lost. So maybe if Tim, Tony, or LBC called, then USC loses.
Buckeye Mike, I do not understand the rankings in the format. Is that what Buckeye Mike's telling me?
Explain yourself, Buckeye
Mike. Which format doesn't he understand? We've talked about all 3 or 4 different rankings and formats today.
Dave's making the comment here, and this is valid. Hendon Hooker has an ACL. It's ended his season. Therefore, that's why they're getting the drop in the rankings. Me personally, I would like to see a team prove that they're much worse, that they're in decline because of that injury, rather than just, your quarterback got hurt, we're going to drop you in the rankings. Your body of work is great, but you know what? Your quarterback got hurt. Oh, we haven't seen your team without your starting quarterback. Wow. Had they done that to Ohio State in 2014?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with it. Maybe the SEC would have another national championship. Because if anything, the SEC needs, we need more national championships.
The SEC would have another national championship.
Because you know what, Mark? I've got to ask you a question. This will probably be the 4th year in a row the SEC wins the national championship, Mark.
Probably.
At what point do people just accept the fact that there is not SEC bias and the SEC is just better than the rest of the conferences? Is there a certain threshold, or is it just going to be an endless cycle of people can't accept it?
I think people that at least maybe somewhat respect my opinion would understand that I would love to have a debate on the best conference. Because I could post 8 videos on that, and we'd go through all the results and everything, and we could have this really good debate breaking down all the conferences this year and how well they did. And I may do it anyway, but it's not debatable right now. And so it's not really good content, because I wish I could debate it. I can't.
Here's an example, Mark, for recruiting rankings of next year, okay? To conceptualize the talent, okay? USC has Lincoln Riley, okay? And he's a great coach and he's a great recruiter, at least in my opinion, okay? They're currently 13th in the country.
Yes.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 SEC teams ahead of them currently. 7 if you include Texas and Oklahoma. So they would be middle of the road in the SEC with where they're currently at in terms of talent.
You're talking about the total team talent rankings on 247.
No, I'm talking about for the 2023 recruiting football team ranking.
That's one recruiting class that has yet to be signed, but
well, yeah, but it's Lincoln Riley's first year, so that's all I'm going to use. I'm not going to use Clay Helm's recruiting classes. I mean, that's not fair to them.
they were pretty good actually. Most of them. One was lousy, but
Yeah, and I know USC, they can fight on all the way, and they can do all they want against Notre Dame. But you know what? They can fight on. But for that, 4-leaf clover is going to come out and just going to stop them. They're going to get their wish.
USC's 11 right now.
I'm at 24/7 Sports, and I've got them at 13.
Where
are you at?
Their total team talent composite for this roster is 11. Bama's 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State's 3, A&M is 4, Clemson, Texas, Oregon, LSU, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and USC.
Man, Texas A&M 4 still can only beat UMass by 17 points.
Yeah, that's a stretch too. That's just a train wreck. That's just
you. That's almost impressive because of how improbable that is. Like, you think the gap between UMass, I'm sure UMass has got to be near the bottom of that list.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So you would think even if you just ran the same play over and over again, you could just outwill yourself to set more than 17 points.
You would think so. You would think that one of us could coach that week and just just pick plays at random and say, "Wow, we're just going to blitz every play." We'll even tell them we're blitzing. Yeah.
UMass is 92nd.
Yes, there they are. They have
Thanks, Will, for doing that research and figuring out. I'm sure we might be the only people curious about UMass's football rating.
I'm surprised they have 3 4-stars.
Good for them.
Huh.
Let's look at Uncle Rico's super chat.
Uncle Rico. Here we go. I think the real is obsessed with the SEC because Kentucky sucks, so he has to latch on to the conference.
Mark, Kentucky's 6-5, right?
Yes.
They've lost to Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss. What is that? 3 of the 15, 20 best teams of the country?
Yes.
And then they lost to Vanderbilt, I'll give it to you, in South Carolina without their starting quarterback. It's not horrible, just they happen to play a really tough schedule. Because guess what? They're in the SEC. And when you're in the SEC, you play the toughest schedules because you play the best teams.
But if you're Kentucky, you also supplement that with 3 just completely horrible teams that you play in non-conference play.
Well, I mean, we play Louisville as well.
Yeah, that's coming up. It might be 6-6 after that game.
The rule the commissioner said for the SEC is you have to play 1 Power 5 opponent. I don't understand, okay, if you're Georgia or Alabama. If Alabama went 12-0 and their only Power 5 non-conference opponent they played was Colorado this year, would they make the college football playoff?
Alabama?
Yes, if they went 12-0,
yes.
But their only Power 5 conference opponent they won was Colorado, would they make the college football playoff?
Of course.
So, in my opinion, what Kentucky's doing is the smart way of doing it. Because there's no benefit of playing these. There's more downside than upside to playing these big non-conference games.
Yeah, when you're Kentucky and you're trying to struggle to get to a bowl game.
If you're Georgia, okay, Georgia can go 11-0 in the SEC East. That Oregon win don't mean anything to them right now. They don't need it.
It definitively makes them number 1.
But if they make the playoffs and they're the best team in the playoffs, they would still win the national championship, right?
I mean, it makes them look a lot better than they would have just had Michigan's non-conference schedule.
Yeah, I get that, but in the situation that they're in currently, that game don't matter.
Sadly enough, you're right. It doesn't matter. If Georgia can schedule any 4 opponents they want non-conference. I don't agree with this. I don't like this, but they can because they play in the SEC, and if they win the SEC, they're going to the playoff. And so they could schedule UT Chattanooga and Utah State and whomever else, those 4 games, and they're going to go to the playoff. You're right. And so they risk a loss against Oregon, let's say, or they crush them as they did, and people just pat them on the back, which they should, we should, and say, you are definitely the best team in the country. Shoot, Washington made a playoff, and they played nobody. They played a horrible schedule, like the 106th schedule in the country in 2016, and their big non-conference game, let's put that in quotes, big non-conference game in 2016 was against Rutgers. And that Rutgers team wasn't as good as these Rutgers teams. They were like the worst team in the country, practically. And Washington made the playoff. And they lost to USC by 2 touchdowns. So
TCU's marquee non-conference game is Colorado.
The whole scheduling thing is screwed up.
Right, and Will brings up a good point. TCU's actual non-conference Power 5 schedule is Colorado. And if they go 13-0, they're going to be in the playoffs. Most likely. I mean, I don't foresee any scenario now where they're not in the playoffs at 13-0. So
yeah, really strong non-conference games is not helping anyone. There is a slim possibility this comes up as this is probably.
I mean, if if Michigan would have beaten UCLA and they lose a 1-score game to Ohio State, that might push them into the playoffs.
That's the point I'm going to bring up, because I can only think of one example where this has happened. Ohio State made the playoff in 2016 when they did not win the Big Ten championship because they had a really difficult Big Ten schedule where they played Michigan, Penn State. Their crossovers were the toughest teams in the other division. Wisconsin was a top 10 team, and they went to Oklahoma. Oklahoma finished in the top 5 in the country, won the Big 12, and Ohio State beat them by 3 scores in Oklahoma. So Ohio State got selected. But that's the only one case out of 8 years I can come up with in which a difficult non-conference schedule benefited somebody.
You know, Mark, if you would have had a better non-conference schedule in 2018, maybe you wouldn't be whining about Notre Dame not having to play a conference championship game.
Ohio State's non-conference game that year was against TCU.
Well, maybe if it was against a better team.
Big 12 championship game appearance.
Right.
Ohio State should have been in the playoff in 2018.
That's pretty good. But yeah, these non-conference games hardly mean anything now, and they're actually, in my opinion, going to mean less in the future. Because if you win all your non-conference games and you lose your conference, you could be selected behind seeding wise them because they won their conference.
Well, I think you make some good points, but I also think that we're going to be in a situation where the committee is going to be looking at a lot of second and third place teams in the Big Ten and the SEC and trying to determine who's going to make. We're going to have what? We've got 12 spots. We got a group of 5, so we got 11 spots. We got 5 conferences. We got 6 at large, right?
Yes.
There's going to be a lot. If the committee approaches it the way they're supposed to, they're going to be selecting teams that went out and scheduled difficult non-conference games to show that they could play.
Yeah, but do you think that would matter as much if, like this year, for example, LSU lost to Alabama? They might be 3 losses, and they would still probably get into 12-team playoff. So how important is that non-conference schedule? Because you can lose to Florida State basically in your own backyard and have extra losses than some other teams and get selected ahead of them.
I think the non-conference schedule, I believe, it all depends on how the committee approaches it, but I believe it's going to become more important because the world we live in right now is you either go undefeated and you're in the playoff, or you lose one game and you should probably be in the playoff. Probably if we went through the 8 years of the playoffs and went through all the one-loss teams, 85% of them make the playoff. And the ones that don't are because they play in a lesser conference, and so they just get kicked out. Or they were Ohio State in 2018 and they had a bad loss. But almost all those teams made the playoffs. But now we're going to go to a situation where 2 and 3 loss teams are going to be selected as at-large teams. And I would think that those non-conference matchups are going to come more into play in the committee's comparison of these teams.
So, as an example, Utah, they lost to Florida this year. Do you think Utah would be left out of the 12-team playoff because they lost to Florida?
They might be, sure.
Okay. I see we got a super chat, Mark.
Well, yeah.
Or you did. I guess you did, not we.
If USC beats Oregon State, UCLA, Notre Dame, and a Pac-12 championship game, would they have a better resume than Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, or Clemson? Well, I'd have to go through the whole schedule to make it decisive, but I think that's a great question. I don't think it's real decisive for any of those teams. So Pac-12 championship game against, let's say it's against Oregon. USC would have beaten Oregon, who I believe's a top 15 team in the country, Notre Dame, who's a top 15 team in the country, UCLA is a top 15, and Oregon State's more like a top 25 team. The Ohio State-Michigan winner is going to have a win against one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country. They're going to have a top 10 win against Penn State, and then they're going to have a top 25 win against Iowa a couple times in that range. So I will say USC's depth of schedule is going to be better than Ohio State and Michigan's. Well, Ohio State's going to have the Notre Dame game as well. I'm going to say that USC's depth of their schedule, the quality layer of their schedule is better than Ohio State and Michigan. TCU's got a very odd schedule from the standpoint of power structure, because it's all kind of like everybody's decent. A lot of Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Texas, The whole conference is good. They're like top 30 good, but they're not going to have a marquee win. Their best win's going to be Texas/Kansas State, whoever you think is better out of those two teams. Kansas State's got the better record. Texas beat Kansas State head-to-head. So Clemson USC is an interesting one because Clemson's schedule is similar to USC's in that they're going to have wins against North Carolina State, Wake, Florida State, maybe somebody I'm missing, Louisville, a lot of 8 and 4 teams. Tim, I'll say that USC will have a better resume than those other teams, and I think they're all really close. I don't think it's a slam dunk, but I'll go USC. I'm not the committee.
I'll say fight on to that. Will, can I get a fight on?
No, absolutely not.
Will didn't make any stupid bets.
We got another super chat coming in.
Tim, give me a comment in the comment section if you listen to my explanation. Did you agree with my explanation, my analysis of the schedules? All right. Super chats coming in. Thank you so much for that. Tim, thank you so much for that. Vandy Dandy. Vandy Dandy has to be pumped. Kentucky and Florida back to back. That's phenomenal. As of course they're on their way to building the best college football program in the country, as predicted by Clark Lee during SEC Media Days. I look forward to walking single file onto the field for a second week in a row Saturday. Herb Street may have jinxed Vandy, though. Okay. Do you guys have a response to that? I don't necessarily understand that.
Well,
Herb
Tennessee,
Street said
they're like the
during
rich school.
Playoff show that he likes Vanderbilt to beat Tennessee.
Oh, okay. Well, I understand that part of it. I kind of assumed that. The first statement.
Oh, when they stormed the field, you know how people jump over the fence and stuff? Mm-hmm. Vanderbilt just walked down the rows and walked it properly into storming the field. They didn't jump over anything.
They're like preppy and proper. They would never storm the field.
I got
they would
just
got
in line.
Yeah.
That might have been because there were like 18 of them.
Well, Darrell, I have to ask you one more question about the SEC.
Yeah.
Do you think that the SEC is only better than the other conferences because they have the couple elite teams like Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia and LSU? Do you think the middle of the SEC is just as bad as everyone else's middle?
14 teams in the conference. I mean, especially with Tech. I was thinking about this last night, actually. With Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, and we can assume, I know Oklahoma's having a pretty bad year this year. I granted that. But reasonably, they should get back.
I mean, good. Sorry. Everyone's mad at me for saying Tennessee's elite.
Okay, good. But reasonably, Oklahoma should get back to being pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were pretty bad between Barry Switzer and Bob Stoops. They could be back to that.
Okay. Let's assume, though, they're like 7-5, 8-4. How about that? Okay. Is that fair?
You mean like going forward, they're going to be a 7-5, 8-4 team all the time?
Yeah, I'm just saying worst case scenario.
They're going to be Mississippi State. Okay.
Is there any way any other conference could be better than them?
Than the SEC?
Yeah. Is there
they just added 2 of the 10 most talented teams in the country, and even if they get beaten down by the SEC, wow, that's just a tremendous addition. Now, I would say that the Big Ten matched those 2, and the way things are looking may have trumped it on the high end with USC's ceiling. Mm-hmm. But of course, the Big Ten's not as good as the SEC right now.
I'm sure them Oklahoma fans are going to love that you said USC has a higher ceiling than Oklahoma.
They do.
They do.
Yeah, I know, but those Oklahoma fans do not like USC at all.
Well,
yeah.
They do not like them at all.
I mean, we saw what happened with Oklahoma and USC at its ceiling in 2004.
Yeah, we tell the truth here.
Fair enough.
Tell it like it is.
I get that, but yeah, well, I just think that the SEC has so many good teams that it's not Alabama. My favorite thing is when people say Alabama and Georgia. If you eliminate those 2 teams, the rest of the conference isn't good. If you do that, you got to eliminate Ohio State and Michigan. You got to eliminate USC and Oregon.
Yeah.
You got to eliminate Texas and Oklahoma. Yeah. And if you do that for all the other conferences, then what do they have? Not a whole, nothing, really.
Yeah. I'm taking the SEC if you do that.
Right. And even if you take those 2 teams away, it's not like the SEC has nothing. Yeah. They've still got some national championships, Heisman Trophy winners, great coaches. So the SEC's got tons of depth compared to the other leagues. Mm-hmm. I know, Will, you don't understand any of this since your team isn't in the conference, but maybe one day they'll eventually join a conference and you can understand this.
Wait, are we going to have Dave jump in here? I was going to cut this out showdown a long time ago, but if Dave, we never hear from Dave, and Dave and I shouldn't be wanting this or anything, but we've had some pretty epic shouting matches in the past because he's been completely off the rails. But hey, Dave, if you want to join the show, I just put the link in the
Darrell, can we have you on our show?
What show?
Me, Jeffrey, Jackson show, the Young Guns.
Oh, I'll have to. Is that on YouTube? Can I have a link to subscribe to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll watch a few episodes of it first before I see. I want to see what it's about. And I know, Jeffrey, I'm just messing with Will. I know Will's a very knowledgeable college football fan.
Mm-hmm.
I just mess with Notre Dame because, well, it's fun to mess with them.
And
he can mess fun with Kentucky because, well, we're 6-5 and we're not that good this year, and I expected them to go 10-2.
Let's bring some Big Ten common sense into this discussion. We got Michael Hogue on the line. Michael.
Mark, you're lucky you did that because I was getting ready to call you from another person. My contact ability from not posting the link for the last 2 hours.
Well, that's because I'm at 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Oh, I've been on since like around 11:45.
Okay. Well,
anyway, I guess happy Thanksgiving anyway, like that.
All right.
I won't be long, but the thing I'm trying to figure out is this: with a couple of the key injuries for Iowa tomorrow, do you think Nebraska can get it done?
Nebraska?
Just a couple of like the tight end for Iowa's out, and I think
sure, yeah, Sam Laporta.
Yeah, and I just wonder if Nebraska can get it done, or am I just wishing a pipe dream right now?
And as I was watching the Iowa-Minnesota game last week, and it was stated by the color analyst, I think it was Spencer Tillman, he said, the Iowa offense runs through the tight end. And I was like, does he realize what a dumb, like, he might be right. I'm not saying he's wrong, but how ridiculous that nobody's offense should be running through a tight end that catches like 4 passes a game. That's why they can't move the ball, because they get it to the tight end 4 times a game. Those are their 4 successful plays every game, and otherwise they suck. I'm like, this is awful. Anyway, does Nebraska have a shot? Well, the talent on both teams is comparable, but like Nebraska is kind of the anti-Iowa in that they find ways to lose and Iowa finds ways to win, and Iowa just has an airtight defense. The one thread of hope, legitimate hope, I will give Nebraska is that Casey Thompson came back last week, threw a couple touchdown passes to Trey Palmer, their best player, and for the 3 games that Casey Thompson was not on the field, Trey Palmer was, utterly useless because the ball didn't come in his direction.
Yeah,
they another thing ball past the line of scrimmage
is why did PJ Flake go against his bread and butter last week when Ibrahim was having a good game?
What did PJ Fleck do wrong?
The interception that led to the game-winning field goal.
Oh, why'd they throw the ball? Because
yes.
I don't remember the exact sequence of plays, but I'm guessing that they were, I don't know, 3rd and 7. I don't know. I know what
short, but anyway, I
know what play it was, but I don't remember the situation.
Okay, one last thing before I let you go, and before everybody starts firing shots at both the real and Will, I think USC gets it done this week, and it might be ugly. Anyway,
okay, Mike. Okay.
Hey, just like you said, they was going to smoke Marshall and Stanford. What happened there?
Well, we're playing much better than we were against Marshall and Stanford, and we've also played up to competition.
I will give you that. And anyway, my last thing is, if it happens that Iowa wins the Big Ten, which game do you think cost Purdue? Was it the Penn State game or the Iowa game that cost the Big Ten West Division?
Purdue is the most inconsistent team in the whole conference. I don't know what they're going to do week in, week out. I thought the most disappointing Purdue effort was against Wisconsin.
Yeah,
it was.
I would say that too. And another thing, you said earlier that Jim Leonard has been hired. I thought he was still the interim coach.
I thought I had heard that they named him the coach, but apparently not. I don't know for sure. No, I said when it was presented to me that may or may not be the case. I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think Purdue didn't look great against Iowa.
That's where I think they lost the Big Ten championship was against Iowa.
Well, sure.
I think that train dying down before the pregame show was an omen of things to come in that game.
Yeah, all because water got it, the battery and shorted it out. Anyway, yeah, you're probably right too.
He's still the interim coach.
Yeah, not bad. And anyway, so just is wondering too, like that, how bad do you think it's gonna be for Florida tomorrow night?
Yeah, Florida State is a significant favorite, and they should be. It's like 9.5 points. It's hard to figure out a way Florida can win that game, especially they're missing basically their wide receiver core has been decimated by injuries.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I gotta ask you this: if somehow, some way, Nebraska gets it done and Purdue gets it done, who do you think they would be a better matchup with, Michigan or Ohio State? Even though I'm not picking them to win the game.
They'd lose to Michigan by 30 and Ohio State by 40. So take your pick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kidding, Michael.
I know.
I'm just kidding. I don't think that they would lose by. They could lose by that much, but I don't believe that they would.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'd have a better shot against Michigan. I think. Michigan's just not as explosive of a team, therefore they tend to play tighter games like we've seen.
Yeah, and the deal, I think I can partially agree, but I can also say Ohio State going back to that trick record. Yeah, last year they got smoked 59-31. But I mean, like with the quarterbacks having the field day against the secondary, but we shall see. Main thing is got to see what happens with Iowa and Nebraska first.
Yes, we do. That's how the sport works. We're going to have to see that one first.
All right, I'm going to go.
Thanks, Michael.
Have a great Thanksgiving or a great Thanksgiving soon. See ya.
Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, good luck to Purdue.
Good luck.
Good luck, Purdue. Old Oak and Bucket. And if Iowa loses, they go to the Big Ten championship game. How about that? And look at this. Oh, boy.
We got them.
Oh, boy.
Good morning,
Tim,
folks.
did you at least enjoy my analysis of USC's schedule?
Yeah, no, I posted in the chat like you asked. Yeah, I think the only team though that's close. I think you said a lot of them are pretty close. I think Ohio State's the close one because if they beat Michigan, then they'll have the Penn State win as well.
Yeah, they've got 3,
and then Notre Dame.
Really nice wins. Yeah,
but I don't see those kind of wins for the other teams on that list. Maybe I'm missing it.
Well, they've got a longer list of decent wins. Like,
well, I mean, would you throw? I heard some of those guys, but would you consider Washington State a decent game?
Yeah.
So there's one more for SC. I mean, we can go down the ladder a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not a big like ranked win guy. Like I think beating a healthy NC State team or a healthy Washington State team, and I only say that term healthy because NC State has had a lot of injury issues in recent weeks. I think those are
South Carolina, Mark.
I think that somewhere between 12 or 15 in the country and 40 in the country is fairly close.
Yeah. After the top 4 or 5, it drops off quick, even in the top 10, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Mark, we've got a few super chats after I guess you want to take a sip of water.
Yeah. My throat just all of a sudden went on me. Vandy Dandy, what do you got here? There is no way to jump on the field at Vandy unless you want to break an ankle. They didn't think of that. See, when they constructed the stadium, there was no thought to that ever happening. Thank you, Vandy Dandy. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and congrats to him for being a Vanderbilt fan and having a great season. I mean, I imagine it's pretty tough being a Vandy fan, so good for them. I'm proud of them. I'm happy for them.
I say this every so often. I applaud all of the college football fans that are on here that do not root for Ohio State and Notre Dame and Alabama. And yes, I'll put you in that category, Darrell, as a Kentucky fan. Although you've been going along here pretty well for the last 5 years or so.
The Joker Phillips years were pretty rough, Mark.
Yeah. He was appropriately named.
Losing by 40 to Vanderbilt in 2012 was not a good thing. I think it was 2012. Might have been 2011.
I'd have to say most of the years for Kentucky have been pretty bad there, Darrell, but
yeah.
Let's not pick on one coach now. Come on, that's not fair.
Kentucky is historically Vanderbilt in the SEC. I mean, that is what it is.
Uncle Rico.
Academics, yeah.
Are we ignoring USC has a loss? No, we are not.
No, I was told that losses, 2 losses to 1 loss, that doesn't really matter, right? Having one more loss doesn't really factor in if you have the wins. That's what I'm learning as we go.
No, you're not learning that from me. I don't know where you're picking that up.
Well, I mean, so Tennessee, how many losses does Tennessee have?
Well, we were comparing Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan, all the teams that are undefeated, except for Clemson. You put in 3 undefeated teams. Is Uncle Rico's point, I believe.
Right. Well, I mean,
correct.
We've had Tennessee had 2 losses, right?
Why are you bringing Tennessee into it? Let's go back to
the conversations. The conversations have been earlier because I would bring that because people were saying that Tennessee, right, should be ranked higher than USC when USC had 1 loss, correct?
Yes, because they have overwhelming wins.
Why all of a sudden do losses count when it didn't count before?
No, it's not that they don't count. It's that there are wins to counterbalance that.
Right.
At least in my opinion. I'm not ranking Tennessee above USC now. They've got 2 losses, and one of them is an awful loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think USC should be ranked above LSU.
Again, and LSU has how many losses?
2.
I didn't count them because they're gonna get blasted by Georgia, so it's not gonna matter. But I mean, in my scenario,
they probably will. But again, I'll make this statement that if this was done in a vacuum and you simply said Tennessee's the what team in the country before the South Carolina game, for me it was number 5. They're the number 5 team in the country. Oh, they lose to a South Carolina team that was 6-4. However good you think they are, they're not very good. They're 35 or 40 in the country or whatever, and they get blown out in the 4th quarter. Like in a vacuum, I have no issue with Tennessee going from 5 to 13 in that scenario. But just because of the configuration of the games that have been played and the wins that they have, I can't justify dropping them below an LSU team that they beat by 4 scores and an Alabama team that they also defeated when they've got the same record.
Yeah. I think Alabama might be a better team than a lot of teams that are ahead of them right now. So, I mean, losses and how you lose and where you, I mean, when you talk about losses also, Rico, you also got to look at the fact that where did you lose? You lose at home? Sure. You lose on the road. Do you lose by 25 points or did you lose by 1 point?
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, there's a lot that goes into a loss. I think it's a shame.
Absolutely.
Cam Rising's been hurt because Utah's stock is dropping, but anybody that's watched Cam Rising play the last like 3 or 4 weeks knows there's definitely something wrong with that dude. He's just not playing right. And so I mean that loss USC has, it's a loss, but I mean I'd love to see a lot of teams in the country, even the top 10, go into Rice Eccles and play them under those circumstances. I think that it might be interesting, but that's just a game we can't play.
They're showing a classic Ohio State-Michigan game on the Big Ten Network from 2003, and they just showed the series record in the previous 50 games was 24-24-2. Just keep that in mind, Michigan fans. That was just prior to the onslaught of like 17 of 19. So,
we were getting close, Will. We were getting close to Notre Dame until we had Uncle Helton come in. I think I think we had down to 8 after Pete Carroll. I think we was close, 7 or 8. I think we got pretty damn close, and you guys to spread that back out again.
Yeah, see, there you go, Uncle Rico. I was reading your mind, Uncle Rico. Just talking about your super chat, comparing those resumes.
I bet it was. Were you guys leading before Tolner came in?
No, I don't think SC's ever, to my knowledge. Were we? That's before my time, man. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I'm old, Will, but I'm not that old. I don't predate. I wasn't following USC, before Tolner, so I don't know.
Yeah, I was.
I don't know. It was pretty damn close. I'll say that. Yeah, it was really close.
Oh, 48-36. Okay.
Yeah, it's up there again.
Well, Mark, let me ask you a question, okay?
Sure.
If Michigan beats Ohio State, and I know this is a nightmare scenario for all the Ohio State people out there.
Yeah, we don't want to think about that.
But Are they now the premier program in the Big Ten?
Yes. I already made that statement earlier this season, or maybe in the offseason. I said, Michigan is the Big Ten champion. They beat Ohio State fair and square. They took one Big Ten championship, but I would like to see it again, need to see it again, because Ohio State has been dominant, the dominant team in that conference for so long. But if Michigan wins again, if they win 2 consecutive conference championships, beating Ohio State, absolutely, they will have supplanted Ohio State.
And it doesn't matter how the game looks or anything like that. It's just the fact that they won.
Not to me. It won't matter.
Okay. Do you think if Georgia wins in the SEC this year that they passed Alabama up as the premier program in the SEC?
Yeah.
Okay. That's something.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Back. Do it 2 years in a row? Sure. Yes.
Okay.
For me, I respect other arguments to the point. I don't think that's like ironclad rule. It's just in my viewpoint. I've seen enough. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that Ohio State's recruited better. I mean, the Alabama, Georgia that's close enough together.
Yeah,
but I just think that the cupboard's still pretty full. At
I totally agree, Tim. I'm just going by the results on the field. Yeah, there would still be a lot of hope and optimism, justifiably so, that Ohio State would bounce right back because they do have a better roster than Michigan.
And that can change with a couple wins in a row as well. So I mean that, and with NIL, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying, and I think I know that Michigan just had recently, like last year, I think had like a top 10, like top 8 class. So I mean, it's not like it's a mile away. But if they win like they won last year, I would say that statement.
But as you know, Tim, the difference between, if you look at the average player ranking and the overall class ranking on 247 Sports, Ohio State was 3 or 4 and Michigan was 8. That was the same difference as 8 and 24 in the country.
Yeah, but again, I'm not. I think that a lot of those numbers, a lot of that stuff is obviously it's not. I mean, it's good overall. I'm not saying recruiting rankings are useless, but some of the numbers some of these guys get, like I've watched a lot of guys, and we used to say there was, there's no development, we can't develop them, but then they go to other programs and they don't develop either. So I don't know. It's a crapshoot, especially like whenever you have a quarterback. Sometimes you have this hot quarterback, they don't pan out. Offensive linemen, you get these hot offensive linemen. Sometimes it's because they just developed way ahead of time. They're man-child in high school at a small high school and they're destroying people. Then they get into somewhere else and they just can't do anything. They can't, and they've already developed physically. They don't really keep developing and they kind of plateau. So I mean, in general, you're right, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, in total, that's what I'm talking about. If you look at the current talent rankings, Texas A&M and Texas are the big aberrations in the top 10. And Texas, not that much of one. If you watch them play, they just kind of run themselves into some bad losses, but they're an extremely talented team and they show it on the field. Bama's 1, Georgia's 2, Ohio State's 3, A&M's 4, Clemson, Texas, Oregon, LSU, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, with USC at 11. That's pretty much, it's pretty accurate.
Well, I say USC at 11, a lot of those dudes did not pan out.
Well, of course, dudes didn't pan out for every one of those teams.
Yeah.
Did you get Ben's? He said, "Let Mark know he missed by super chat," or did he?
Yeah, you missed the super chat, Tim. Apparently, your team's 11th ranked talent. You've got the 11th best coach, according to Mark Rogers.
I'm not going there until after the season because Mark told me he had to show him something, building something. We'll see. We'll see if it doesn't fall apart the next 2 or 3 games.
Okay, I'm just pointing that out there. Maybe
it was a valid point. I thought 11 was too low, but the fact that he walked into a situation, which is, again, kind of questionable because here's what I think on that one. Sorry, Oklahoma fans, but when he showed up as an offensive coordinator, they weren't looking so hot at Oklahoma. They really weren't. They had like a 5-loss season right before he got there, so they were looking pretty shaky. Yeah. Well, that's where. But I mean, how many 5-loss seasons has Ohio State had in the past 10 years? Alabama, Georgia.
Yeah. Kirby Smart's first year.
So I mean, things weren't looking so great. Let's put it that way. So
it's all relative to the program's expectations.
I don't know by heart, Mark, but there was also like a 3-loss season in there. I mean, they were in a row. It was like a 5-loss.
So Riley's first year was 17. The first year, or the previous year, they won the Big 12. They won the Sugar Bowl. They went 12-2. The season that you're talking about was the year before. So that was in 16, before Riley.
Well, no, I'm talking about
when he arrived as offensive coordinator.
2014, right? No, 2015.
14, yeah, in 16, before he was the head coach. I'll get to your point, Tim. I understand you're talking about when he arrived as offensive coordinator, but before he was head coach, in 16, they won the Sugar Bowl. They finished in the top 5 or 6 in the country. In 15, they went to the playoff.
That was his first year, right?
As offensive coordinator? Yeah. In 14, yeah, they had the 8-5 year. They got blitzed by Clemson in a bowl game. 13, they won the Sugar Bowl. They beat Alabama. They finished 5 or 6 in the country. 12, they lost to Johnny Manziel in the Cotton Bowl, and they finished like 10th or 11th.
Lost to Notre Dame, too.
Yeah,
we're not going through all their losses, Will. We're just...
Well, okay, I'll put it this way. So in 2000... Yeah, and so 2014, they had the 5-loss season.
Yeah.
Then they had a solid... Before that, they were winning 10, 11 games, right? I get you. My point is not as much as the fact that he walked into a situation and was living off it. His record consistently was better than a lot of those years, because to my knowledge, he was only losing like 2 games a season, right?
Yeah.
I see a lot of 3 and 4 loss, seasons before that. So to say, I'm looking at the list right now. So I'll just do it for a while. So 2005, 4 losses, 2006, 3 losses, 2007, 3 losses, 2008, 2 losses, then 2009, 5 losses.
National championship game in 2008. That was their second loss.
Yeah, they shouldn't have been there. USC should have been there.
Well, regardless, they were
seriously. USC should have. That 2008 team absolutely should have been there over the Sooners.
Sure, but they played a respectable championship game. They lost by 10 points.
Yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of 3 and 4, and
I'm
5
seeing
loss.
Bob Stoops finish in the top 10 3s, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times.
And we're going to see this year that it looks like Lincoln Riley is going to have yet another year of having 2 or less losses. Like the guy's never lost 3 games. I'll probably just jinx myself, but he's never lost 3 games in a season.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. And he's doing it 2 places.
He's extremely good at his job. I also made the statement that my rankings from like 4 to 12, whoever was right behind him, and then all those guys in front of him was like that close.
But you also had, I'm not sure, I think he's in the Big Ten, a guy that hadn't built his own program ahead of him, right?
Jim Harbaugh.
Well, Harbaugh came in and fixed that mess.
Yeah.
Oh, where'd you have? You didn't have Ryan Day in the top 10?
Yeah, I had him in the top 10.
That's the Big Ten guy. Tell you what, who's had in a better situation? Riley or Day?
Day.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Now, Mark, are you going to take away a little bit of credit for Riley because he used the transfer portal?
No, it's part of the deal.
Well, not just that, but he took over a 4-8 team. Will, I mean, if you walk
into a shortcut, it's a little bit of a shortcut.
I don't know. It's available to everybody. Will, there's guys that aren't using it. I mean, Dabo has got to wake up and start using it, aggressively. Otherwise, or get some better coordinators. One of the two. So this 24-hour stream, Mark, I just came on as a joke to mess around. I'm not meaning to keep you awake. It really isn't fair. You said like an hour ago.
What we should do now, Mark, is we should pull up the 130 coaches list and go line by line and see exactly where they're too high and too low this late.
You guys can tear me to shreds. Yeah.
And then we should make a graph and project where they are going to hand out if they win their next 2 games or lose their next 2 games. That's what we should do.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I do believe
it's what the off season's for.
Is Mark Stoops going to keep his lofty position, or do you think he's going to drop after this year?
He might drop some because he was pretty up there, but
yeah,
you got to remember it's all relative.
For real, I'm just messing with you. I'm just messing around.
I'm sure Mark Stoops will take his drop in the Voice of College Football rankings for
hopefully
the 9
he's ahead of
million
Jimbo Fisher this year.
Now.
That's all I want. As long as he's ahead of Jimbo Fisher this year, I'm happy.
Oh, Jimbo's going to take a plummet.
And David Shaw needs to take a drop as well. He was like at 20. He was ahead of Dave Aranda, I believe.
He does.
Hopefully, David Shaw takes a massive drop. I know he's a Pac-12 guy and all, but still.
Well, Aranda's not having the greatest. I mean, I think he's a great coordinator. We know that. But he's not having the greatest season this year as well.
Team. But
they're having a better year than Stanford.
And just to watch them play, they're a good football team. Like Stanford's awful.
Mark, are you going to put Marcus Freeman ahead of Jimbo? Any chance?
Yes. Yeah,
wait, hold
Jimbo
on. I don't know. They did lose. Did Jimbo lose to Marshall this year? Speaking of which, hold on, Stanford. Great segue. See, speaking of Stanford, are we sure we want to talk about? You should have waited for Freeman before we got past the Stanford comment. So
yeah.
Sorry, Will.
You're fine. I walked into that a bit, but I did want to rank. I do want to Mark to say that Marcus Freeman's already a better coach than Jimbo Fisher after 1 season of head coaching in college football.
I tell you, I'm down on Jimbo. This is just unthinkable. He underachieved before this year, and now this is just beyond atrocious.
They beat UMass though, Mark. They got a win. They're on a 1-game winning streak.
Yeah, and I do rank these like in the moment. It's not based on history. It's supposed to be who is right now, number 1 through 131. Yeah.
Ben, who's the guy on third base?
That was probably what Jim Harbaugh commented last year about Ryan Day. Remember Jim Harbaugh said something like it's easy to start on third base?
Yeah.
And did he say he did that also with a left-handed pitcher? Sorry. All right. All right. Well, you guys, sorry, the super chats have stopped, and Mark has to go to bed.
Absolutely.
Oh, hold on. We got a super chat.
Oh, damn it.
Well, I got to read Ben's. All you Michigan fans out there, please contribute to the hashtag Help Mark Hope Fund in view of Ohio State's imminent loss this Saturday. Darrell, or one of you, can you please say the last part of that?
I can't say it.
I can say it. We have a winning record because of Go Blue. There you go.
Yeah, I'm not saying that.
Dandy was one as well.
Another one? There's no way. Okay, we said that one. We got on.
He has a Jimbo comment. It just came out.
All right, Jimbo. Man, I'm way behind. Did we get Vandy? Jimbo would be 1-11 at Vandy. Yeah, that's the game I wish we would have seen this year. A&M and Vandy.
I'm not trolling. I would pick Vanderbilt to win.
I would pick Vandy as well.
Yeah, they got some mojo going.
I might pick Colorado over Texas A&M at this point.
No, stop. That's against the laws of physics. You're not allowed. Oh my God.
You're telling me Colorado isn't 17 points better than UMass?
I'm trying to figure out I'm still trying to figure out how Cal, who is a bad team with no offense whatsoever, how they lost. I'm still trying to figure that out. But
Yeah,
They
Colorado.
should have beat Notre Dame. Cal should have beat Notre Dame this year.
Don't get me started, Will's here. I'll talk to you later, Daryl.
I know. I knew you gave me out to some other team, so I had to go there.
Will, you better hope the Notre Dame team that showed up against Marshall and Cal and Stanford doesn't show up.
They won't. I'm confident that they won't. If this was last year's USC team, they might, but not. Here's
what's up, Will. I think you guys got to come out fast and and eat clock, make the game like maybe 10-7 or whatever, going midway through the second quarter, and then it's going to be interesting. But if
I'm hoping that we can come out and force a punt and then immediately just score.
That would be helpful, especially with our special teams. If they're anything but special, that's going to be a big opportunity for you. But I will say this: if you guys get behind and then Drew Pine's got to win this thing with his arm,
we're screwed.
We're done.
Ugly, we're done.
It's going to get ugly. So.
Yeah, if Notre Dame goes down by 14 points, I'm going to flip the channel.
And here's the thing: UCLA went up 14-0 because USC started flat, which is crazy. In a game against UCLA, they were flat. They got stopped inside the red zone twice. And for USC to come back against them, obviously Notre Dame has a better defense, but it's not like that's Colorado's defense out there. It's gonna be worrisome if you guys fall behind. That's all I'm gonna say. Well, not for me, but for you. Oh, we got two more.
Super chat in there for Mark. Please, the real MVP. 4 SEC teams won't be in the playoff. I doubt 4 SEC teams will be in the playoff this year. Maybe once the playoff expanded, we can get 4, maybe 5.
I'm about to throw up.
I think 6 would be pushing it, but you never know once Texas and Oklahoma gets in there.
Let's understand, I'm not completely taking the real side on this, but I will say once that first 12-team bracket comes out, if it's anything like what we would have seen out of a 12-team bracket the last 10 years or so, there's going to be a path there for wow, this semifinals overloaded with SEC teams.
Well, can you imagine at the beginning of the year when they do the first playoff ranking, if Alabama's undefeated, Georgia's undefeated, Oklahoma's only got a loss, Tennessee's undefeated, LSU's got only a loss. You figure all those teams would be in the bracket. So you would just have a glob of SEC teams.
Well, you also probably have Michigan, Ohio State, USC, Penn State in a lot of those times. And you have Wisconsin, Iowa. If they find an offense, they'll be hopping in there too. So it's not. I think that they might push. And UCLA, they're 8-4 last year, and it looks like Chip Kelly's got it going. If he ever learns how to recruit, you're gonna have a lot of teams that might push for those spots. So,
Tim, I'll wait for Wisconsin and Iowa once they find an offense. Okay, I've been waiting for a while. Corey will talk to you all night Corey Bradda will talk to you about Iowa's offense all night. All day, all night. That's all his favorite topic, I'm sure.
They just need a competent offensive coordinator and a top 15 quarterback. And with that defense, they're going to win a lot of games.
You should check out Iowa's stretch of games the last 20 years against the SEC. It's pretty good.
Probably. I'll take a look. I know they lost their most recent one.
Again, Kentucky, of course,
you know that.
But that was a really good game. It was a respectable outcome. They played really well. But they won bowl games against Mississippi State, South Carolina, Florida, LSU.
They're a good program. They've got a good head coach. They got a good culture down there or up there in Iowa. So,
do you think you would have won the Big Ten West this year, Daryl?
We could have. We would be in that glob with Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin. Would we have won it? Maybe. We're right there with them, I think.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So what do you guys think? Who do you guys think will be the first to hire a new coach? The teams who fire theirs during the season.
So we're talking about the teams that are currently looking for coaches, meaning Auburn, Nebraska.
I think Wisconsin goes with Jim Leonhard.
I think they will too.
So if I had to take a guess, they just removed the intern tag off him.
I think Matt Rule's going to Nebraska.
I am going to go with my Nebraska guy who knows what's going on there and says that they're playing on Friday and expect Saturday or Sunday for them to name a new head coach.
Yeah, the teams that fired guys early on, earlier in the season are the ones that have the jump.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Auburn's just starting. I mean, I'm sure they're just starting it, but you can't go around fishing even in back channels when you haven't fired your coach. It's just bad luck. The coaching community is a small community, and that's you got to do things right. Hopefully, they're doing things right.
Will, are you ready for this one?
I know, I've already seen it. Well, I think Marcus Freeman's a better recruiter than Charlie Huff. So
well, we don't know that. If Charlie Huff came to Notre Dame,
I mean, I'm sure he'd do a respectable job, but I don't think he would be up there in the top 3. I don't think he would do any worse than Kelly.
Will, why are you still bashing Brian Kelly?
Oh, hey, listen, Mark,
he's
this came up in the chat. You should one of these times. I think Brian Kelly's done a great job with offensive line and front 7. But beyond that, he is not. I mean, we've watched Notre Dame football for years. Not be able to attract a top flight blue chip quarterback to Notre Dame, isn't that kind of an indictment?
I get it. Brian Kelly has his flaws, but still, I mean, attack.
That's a big
going
flaw.
after him 9 months.
Lost you. That's quite a big flaw.
David Greenshield, appreciate it. Deion Sanders at Auburn. Imagine the Iron Bowl. Yes, they could do Aflac commercials like in between quarters or whatever. Absolutely. Will, boys.
Yep.
What do you think? Let's shut it down. Appreciate you guys jumping on, keeping me company.
Last call for super chats. Last call.
Let's go. Keep this telethon rolling.
We need who? Kyle Pickett on here.
Well, that would be nice.
He was on here on the Florida State show the other night, making his presence known. Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, guys.
It's a wrap.
More football tomorrow. I'll be on after the Florida State game.
That'll get ugly early.
What's that, Will?
I think that'll get ugly.
Just like UCLA Cal, that's be ugly early as well.
Thanks,
They're
Cheryl.
gonna be mad.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks, Will. Tim.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Tim.
We'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, everyone. I'm going to come on late night after the primetime games, most notably Florida State on Friday. And I am already working on, the stack of notepads are here. The breakdown between LSU and Georgia, since we already know that. Clemson, North Carolina for next week. Yes, right here at the Voice for College Football. So lock it in. Please give me a like. Please subscribe if you have yet to do so here at the Voice of College Football. Again, Cheryl, thank you for joining. Dave E., thank you. I see Connor's here. Appreciate you guys. David Greenshield, everyone. E. Gibson, a lot of familiar names. Good to see Bilal, Mike. Thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow.